Welcome. Plus Ultra presents The Grey Lodge, Kemetic American, serial experiments in the new American Gnosticism. Ooh, that's pretty fucking cool. I am your host, Jin the Ninja. I host a show called Threshold Saints, which has been on hiatus for 3 weeks because I obviously did a little personal time, but it is coming back full force on the 1st. So anyone who's listening and your episode has not aired, it's fucking airing. I just was a little slow. I got a new computer, new desk, new life, a new setup. So I am obviously, we've been doing these sort of speculative series. This is I think it's our third one. Is this our third one? I think that's right. I think so. So when I was gone, there was, yes, so Matt's saying yes. So when I was gone, we had an amazing space hosted by the Mamara, as well as Joshua the Branch and Solar Exile, who is working. So we'll acknowledge that he's working, but he'll probably listen in. And if he jumps up, he jumps up. But so they held it down for me. They held down the Grey Lodge. They had their own fun, and for people who attended, I really appreciate that. Matt and Joshua and Solar are definitely deserving of your attention as much as me. Um, Probably more, because that's what sort of makes these spaces interesting. They're kind of co-magical working group. That's what it is. It's a co-magical working group. We're all here in consensus. We're all here in maybe we don't you don't all consent to my crazy speculative ideas, but you consent in a way that you're talking about Kabbalah, Tantra, the world, meta politics, meta reality, meta theology, meta history, meta magic. And that's really what these spaces are. So, and that's what the Grey Lodge is. So, I do not do these spaces alone. I just maybe generate the seed for them, and then I like to see where everybody else, of course, takes it. Um, I'm joined by my co-host Matt Murrah, and I'll let him introduce himself very much quicker, much more briefly than last. And not he doesn't have to introduce himself briefly. I will have a shorter intro this week because it is kind of like riding a horse in a way, doing these after a little break. And also Joshua the Branch. So he's also a co host, and I see he dropped from co host, but I will absolutely add him back. And so we have Joshua the Branch and Matt Murrah and Solar Exile, who are my co hosts. Of course, anyone from the Lodge is always welcome to come up if they have a particular. I guess, direction they want to take the theme. And it's not like the themes are what we stick to. Of course, I just kind of make them and they're kind of the general outline, but you can be as far ranging or not as you want. So let's do room shout outs. And then we'll let the boys, my co hosts, introduce, I shouldn't call them the boys, but my co hosts introduce themselves or the co hosts. Yeah, this is a Grey Lodge group chat, magicians group chat. We rock with each other and we host these Friday night Metamagic spaces, and we all do our own projects, but I think this has been some of my favorite kind of online work that I've done at all. Like, not at all, but in the whole scope, because it's metafiction. Like, that's what I'm interested in, and that's what these spaces are. And it's metafiction because we all bring and add to it, and then obviously we all talk about Kabbalah, we all talk about Tantra, we all talk about Gnosticism, we all talk about all these things, right? It's true meta magic. So, and it happens beyond space and time because we are sort of unifying the world in space on an app, very Ketu ROM. We're in the smoke of Ketu, so we're fucking surfing. We're fucking not surfing the Kali Yuga. We're surfing the Aeon of the Daughter because we are Kali Yuga rejectors. Not really, but we're just saying that we're in a transitional phase because a transitional phase simply means it's like an understanding that the time has changed because our consciousness has also changed, and our consciousness has been through many thresholds. Not a pun on my show, simply a pun on reality. Really, we have gone through many thresholds in the last 5 years, probably far more than at any other time. We are connected more than at any other time. I am not a technology. I'm not like an AI. I don't worship the AI. I don't. I get you guys all know this. I'm crunchy as fuck, and like I'm more of like a return to monkey. But since we do live in this aeon, and it is a very interesting one in my opinion, we have to use the tools. We have to use the Rahuvian and Katuvian tools at our disposal. And that also makes wisdom and knowledge and understanding, at least to a degree, more accessible. But it also allows us to sort of like think through things in a sort of non-dual, middle path way. So we can integrate them into our lives because our life is our great work. I mean, that is your life is your great work. There is no metaphysics beyond your own life. So, I mean, of course, there are metaphysics beyond your own life, but your life is where all that attention should go. So, with that being said, welcome and room shout outs. So we have Haroon. Haroon has been my mutual for, I think, almost 3 years. A long time. Since I first started my account. One of the first, like, maybe 300 people I ever followed. Because someone else recommended that I follow Haroon because they knew that Haroon is also weird like me and Canadian. So we have that sort of in common. And of course, he never has disappointed. So thank you so much, Haroon. Really appreciate it, brother. Appreciate that you came and like walked through, and I hope you enjoy it and can like last through at least some of the weirdness that happens. We have, of course, John Space Answered, our Kiwi brother, who is sort of also Canadian. I mean, he is also a Canadian, but he's also Kiwi, like many Canadians actually. And he always brings the astro knowledge to the group chat, and pretty much any astro question I have, I I run it by him. And of course, we have our third co-host, and last but not least, Solar Exile, who is our Kabbalah Zen, now Dzogchen, now Taoist bro. So he kind of runs the gamut of he wears many hats, and we appreciate him. Joseph Reed, we have Joseph Reed. So Joseph is our lodge member. He's an awesome guy. He studies Marshall McLuhan, at least the archive. So we are also very interested in that because Marshall McLuhan knew what the fuck's up, and he was talking a lot about the same things that we're talking about, or at least that I'm talking about. So I mean, Solar and obviously Matt and Joshua all talk about those things as well. I just mean it is something that frequently comes up, and he is a figure that obviously I went to. I won't say which university, but it's kind of obvious if I say this. But um, he taught at a university I went to, and have been fascinated by his work since I was wee little 18-year-old undergrad. Um, doing that. So that's what's up. Okay, Rom. So we have Rom, our Singaporean bro, who is I would say he's our Sri Vidya sort of master, but he knows a lot about a lot of shit. So Rom's great. I hope he comes up one day as a co-host. I know he thinks he can't, hold it down quite as good, but I actually think that Rom would be totally fine, and I think he just has a little shyness, and which is what I used to have too. I mean, I used to always joke like I'm gonna yak. Like that wasn't just a joke for Greg Carlwood. It was also it's been a thing because I have actually yacked on live. I won't say which one. It was from nerves, not any lives that we've done. I'm saying in my whatever podcasting hobby, patrician hobby, we're calling it from now on. Because I don't do it for profit, obviously. I do it for the love of the game. So yeah. So Rom, don't be nervous. Honestly, you honestly don't even remember. Now when I go on rejects and Nick turns on live, I'm like, okay, yeah, no problem. Fucking live. Like, let's go. I just whatever's gonna come out of my mouth is gonna come out. But I do have pretty good discernment. So I mean, I try. But whatever happens, it happens, and then you learn to let it go. And sometimes it's really hard because I'll listen back and I'll be like, damn, that was not good Kabbalah, Jen. That was like, what the fuck were you thinking? What were you talking about? Like, it's not that I totally am off base. It's just that I don't like how I articulate things. And sometimes our understanding of those sort of interactions and the Sephira and the experiences and the deities and the iconography, sometimes that comes and goes. No matter how much we've studied, no matter how much, magical experience we've had, sometimes those things there's a flux, right? We're in the Aeon of the Daughter, so there's a flux. So that's what happens. So I see Monty just came up, but I'm gonna introduce Mookie first. So Mookie, obviously crow face bikini. I don't know about that, but Very interesting. We love Mookie because she has been a longtime supporter of the Lodge. She doesn't ever ask me for anything except that she loves, I guess, my nature / gardening pictures. So very easy currency to transact. So thank you so much, Mookie. And we obviously say a special prayer for all the birds that you take care of. And we appreciate that you come all the way from Europe and through space and time to join us in this co-magical space. And of course, last but certainly not least, Mr. Montgomery Carlo, who is a veteran podcaster, 4-time or 5-time guest. Actually, I'm sitting on 2 excellent Monty episodes, which will be coming out really soon. I was just saying that I did take a month hiatus, but uh, the first everything will be coming out every 3 days. Hope you all ready. It's a lot. I can't believe I edited that much. But okay. So Monty is a great Lodge brother, and he is also I would say Monty's a co-host. I know Matt, Joshua, and Solar would totally be fine with that, and like agree with me. And Monty is like our co-host as well, and he's obviously welcome to speak, and anyone who wants to is welcome to come up and speak. But I'm gonna let Matt and Joshua. I think that was my fastest time. I really do. I know it took forever, but it was my fastest time. 11 minutes. Hey, that's pretty fucking good. Okay, okay. So I'll let Matt and Joshua come up and introduce themselves, and then I'll kind of circle back and we'll talk about the topic and like how I'm going to frame it. But then obviously you guys know you are welcome to frame it in any way you want. Okay, Matt, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here again, despite wanting to be here last week, but X was kind of crazy. Nothing was working. But yeah, anyways, Matt Moore here. Like Jin said, had the pleasure to host the last spaces. Was really cool. Love doing these. It's like I always look forward to them. It's very nice, very interesting. But yeah, if you like Kabbalah, talk about Kabbalah. If you like stuff that has to do with Kabbalah, talk about that as well. But yeah, being kind of chill here on Twitter because I'm building some stuff. So if you're curious about that as well, just check my profile, check my website. Very crazy stuff going on. But yeah, back to Eugene.
Okay, Joshua, I'm letting you go right away. I'm just kidding. Joshua, please introduce yourself and plug all the things you want to plug.
Thank you very much for hosting, and also Matt for being here, and Solar, shout out. Yeah, did an episode recently with Occult Rejects, I think on spider symbolism. The one before that with King of Cups on cross symbolism. Upcoming, we got some Messiah archetype in June for Father's Day. Maybe Full Metal Alchemist, that sort of stuff as well, which I think might relate to tonight's topic of Kemetic America as far as alchemy is concerned. So I'm excited to talk about that topic. Pleasure to be here as always, and I'm excited to share. Thanks. Oh, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Everybody's gonna clip that and think I'm fucking Jew now, but it's fine. They already do. Okay. But that's fine. Honestly, make that money. I always tell Heidi, I'm like, the one thing I can appreciate about Mormons and Jays is like they fucking know how to get it. So, go get it. They got that money magic on lock, right? So there you go. So, Kemetic American. So, I wrote Afro-Syncretic Crossroads for the New American Magi, which I personally think is a very good title myself, but I think it's cool anyway. I was going for that kind of like, oh, there we have Bold, Brave, Free. I'm so sorry I haven't seen you in 2 weeks, and it feels like forever. But I see you. I acknowledge you. You're a Dakini in our lodge. Appreciate you for coming, and you are always welcome. And you're always welcome to come up as speaker, as well as anyone is from the lodge. And thank you very much. And of course, we have Leo in the house, so we've got some real Hapaborean action happening because Leo is also a fellow Hapaborean. Even though he hails from Europe, technically he is a Hapaborean. So thank you so much, Leo. I hope you for as long as you want to stay, I hope you enjoy what we're going to discuss tonight. I hope it's not too American, because it is going to be American, because that is kind of what the series is. And the series is kind of, well, I should say, the series is called Welcome to Hyperborea. So it is about the new American Gnosticism, so the sort of meta theology of both the land of America, the people of America, and those might not even be the same thing. But I like that maybe there's an intersection, maybe there's a crossroads where those two things kind of converge. And then we kind of explore in our many various ways how those things converge and, interact with us in our reality. So, also, everything I'm going to say, everything that we're all going to say is speculative, 100% speculative. So it's not, I just want to make sure that people understand it's not like a Q thing. It's not like, we're not selling anything. I'm not a Scientologist. I'm not a Mormon. Like, you believe whatever you will. But I do think that I present and my ideas, and then obviously the boys who carry the vehicle for that, or are also the vehicle for that, but also their own narratives. I think we all agree that there's something really interesting happening. We're in like an aeon of flux, as I always say. And so that's really what they're kind of discursive, magical conversations, metamagical conversations about that. But specifically, Welcome to Hyperborea is about the reality that we're all here now. So regardless of how we came, right? We're all here now. And we all carry with us in some way sort of wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. At least if we can make of that into something, at least we can make knowledge from those two very important things, right? So the different kinds, though. So we're also seeing what works, what doesn't. We're being pragmatic, and we're also being non-dual, meaning we're not going to extremes, not right or left-hand path, just walking the Sephira as they are, lightning and dragon together in synthesis, almost, you could say. And also weird Christianity, because like Monty likes to say, dudes rock. Well, weird Christianity also rocks, just simply because it is a useful framework to kind of understand the American identity. And of course, that's not just like a ethnicity, that's not just a race. Of course, you can make interesting wingnut arguments about it. I'm not against that even. Solar, not against it at all. But I just think that like we have to look at it in a more syncretic lens, and not low IQ syncretism, high IQ syncretism, because America is at its core syncretic. And that's what America is. So the Kemetic American. So I know that Joshua was saying alchemy, and yes. However, for my part at least, what I was going to talk about was root work, hoodoo, New Orleans voodoo, Missouri snake cult, Jason Barry's famous book Black Hawk. That's what I was going to talk about. Indian spiritualism, not Indian as not dots, not dot Indian, feather Indian. And then what I'm talking about with Indian spiritualism is actually like the Indio Poderoso. So like the powerful Indian, like the court of Indians, if you want to say, in like spiritualism or Sanse, or Divisions 21, which is another Puerto Rican kind of like Kimbanda, Umbanda, religion. So it's like an Afro-syncretic religion that marries in like the three key, we could say, root races. We've discussed this before, of America, which are obviously Westoids, white, um, black, and well, specifically African American. African Americans are obviously syncretic in and of themselves because they're all mixed in a way, even though we don't necessarily account for that in our cultural and social sort of definitions of those things. But yes, technically, yes. And of course, indigenous, because that is interesting, if only because we use so much of the spiritual technology that exists here. So I'm not saying that they're even indigenous to here, but they had a long sort of relational use of certain things, so they have maybe a deeper understanding, or maybe they just is the understanding that they had or have that is useful for a modern American magician. So not a shaman LARPer or anything. And I don't have a problem with that. Like, you do you, like, do as thou will. But I also think, like, let's be real, it's 2025. Like, we don't we don't have to take like the name Dreaming Blackhawk or like whatever, or like Eagle, I don't even fucking know. Like Eagle Cloudstorm. We don't have to be Eagle Cloudstorm in 2025. We can just be you know, like just like grown up magicians like in the world and talking about magic in a very like sort of, I would say it's the meta system. That's how I like to think of it, because it's like, what are we talking about? We're talking about Kabbalah. We're using the tree in the, I think, almost in the essence of what it was meant to be used for. We're sort of looking at systems in comparative religion, in comparative theology, obviously in comparative magic, and we're saying, okay, so where does this bring you? What position on the tree would this be? What path would this be? Now, I'm not as particularly good at the paths, as you all know, because I always say that, and I'm actually not, but I would say I'm quite good at the Sephira, so I'm able to do this to, I would say, strong degree. Maybe not perfect, but I think it's pretty good, to be honest. I'm proud of the way that not just myself but all of us have explained certain like deeper theological things I've never heard anyone sort of tackle in a non Patreon or non paywalled podcast. And I think we even go way beyond what is a lot on offer, to be honest. So good job. You all get a gold star, every single one, listener and co-host alike. And I won't get one because I'm obviously Rom did the tweet about how I am a warring tantric, but then sometimes, well, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm a benevolent guru because I'm not a guru, but I took it to mean me. So if that's egoic, that's egoic, but it is what it is. Yeah, so it can be both things, right? So that's how we're gonna deal with it. So Kemetic American, it was supposed to be like a funny play on like what are all the racist things they say? Uh, Fire Alarm American, Scholar American, Basketball American. Yeah, there are many things. Okay, so I thought, why not Kemetic American? Because this is a big, and I did have an episode on this. I'm just saying, with Chief Agatahani. Yes, Uktena. So that's episode 8. That was a long time ago. But so we did talk about this. We talked about like the origins of Black American sort of like modern magic, like brother Bobby Hemmett, all the weird, like we touched on Dwight York and the Nuwabians and their weird Serpent Mound cult. And make no mistake, all the occult groups in America are very obsessed with the mounds because they often build temples on them. And I'm not kidding. Even the Albany chapter of Nexium is built on a mound. So interesting times. So I think it all ties in, but I don't think it necessarily ties in the way, like if it was just me riffing stream of consciousness for 2 hours and 11 minutes, we'll say 2 hours and 22 minutes. I probably would just talk about like practical root work, what roots I like. I would use gardening metaphors to talk about Kabbalah. And I do have actually a response for you, Joshua, because we'll say someone, it was Solar, but he asked me, he said specifically, Joshua wondered, I don't know if you wondered, but I'm using that as I'm articulating it that way. So you wondered what I mean by turn thunder into diamond. So I actually was thinking about this all day. Not because I don't know what it means. If you just asked me, of course I could answer it. But like there are multiple different ways that you could sort of you could explain it. So one way is you take Hode, you turn it into Netzach, thunder into diamond. You take the word of something and you take the splendor of the word and you turn it into materiality. But you'll say, Jin, Netzach is not on the material pillar. And yes, you are correct. It is not on the material pillar. But the splendor of the light that is seen through the prism of a diamond can be held in materiality. Can be. And also the light can be rectified at Yesod, which can also be a place for which you can ascend higher on the tree if you so desire. So that's interesting. However, you always want to have it, as I always say, be in dialectical synthesis. Now you might say, well, then how can I actually traverse the Sephira and manifest things through it? There are times where you will go more into the Sephira and through the paths, but then you have to bring it back. You have to bring it back into synthesis, because that's the way you're really going to integrate it. And I'm not trying to give people Kabbalah advice and like that I'm so great. Like, yeah, I think intellectually I'm quite strong, but and practically I mean, I obviously I think I'm good. Like, come on. I mean, yeah, you all know that. So basically bring it into synthesis. So you can also bring the diamond into thunder. You can also bring the splendor of light, as I said, of the diamond, and you can transmute that in the quicksilver furnace, and then you can make of something else. Maybe you build the tree. Maybe that's even where it happens. Not at Hod per se, but at Yesod. You could say that. So, yeah, so I think that's a good way to describe it, Joshua. But I also think that Vajra, your favorite word, I don't know if it's your favorite word, but I know you like it a lot. So Vajra can also be translated as diamond thunder or adamantine. Both of those things are correct. But there is a difference between Buddhist Vajra and Vedic Vajra. So just make sure you understand that there is a little bit of a ontological difference in the way that that is understood. And one way, at least one way, you could understand it in a tantric Buddhist sort of context is that you are the Adam Kadmon, as I've said, or the Shem. You are becoming the adamantine man through the way you live your life and also through the metaphysical undertakings that you do as a magician. So, and as we are all in this magical co-working space together, you're all magicians. So you're all magicians now, at least right now. So that's another way you could also think of it, is like it's knowledge, it's death, but you're hearing it, you're kind of dissecting it, maybe understanding what the individual components are, hearing it for the first time, maybe not. If you come, well, everybody who I recognize, Harun's actually dropped in a few times into different spaces, but he probably thinks they're really weird, but that's okay. Basically, it's just remember, bring all things into rectification, bring all things into synthesis. Yesod's a great place for that. It's also access to death. But what I'm trying to say is that maybe maybe turn thunder into diamond is about taking the knowledge and carrying it with you through time, through space, transcending both of those things at the same time. Okay, Joshua, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I was thinking too, I think you explained to me before how Vajras were created maybe on the beach by putting lightning rods in the sand. And so based on the purity of your metal mixtures and such, which can be kind of symbolic of the work you've done in whatever Sephira, right? The combination of those two opposites, so to speak, then the lightning draws down and combines them together and fuses them. So that the Vajra then is the diamond, right? It's been lightning become material in a sense. And so you really helped me understand that a lot better. Thank you.
You are most welcome, and I didn't want to single you out, Joshua, and act like you did. I thought you already. I mean, I know you knew or understood to a large degree, and maybe you were just asking for clarification, or maybe you just wanted to hear like what my direct response to it was. But I was trying to articulate a point about Netzach and how Netzach is not necessarily a place of formation, but it also is, because it is the garden. So it can be also a place where we build things, not necessarily build things, but we plant the seeds for things, right? So it's really important for ideas to sort of have a positionality, and that's a good positionality, because those things are indestructible in a way. Ideas are indestructible, or at least they have a quality that can also traverse space and time, because you can take it with you. People can take it with you. People who listen, that's what makes these spaces so fucking interesting. Because even if people tune in and they're like, oh, Jin's full of shit, I don't like him, he's mean to some pagan on Twitter, like, whatever, they don't like me. Okay, but maybe they hear something interesting. Maybe they hear something interesting that you say, Joshua, or Matt says, or Solar says, or someone else, or makes a comment, or they just think through something, and they reach a deeper understanding, or they even maybe reach higher knowledge. Not necessarily magical experience, but just through kind of like through a dialectical process of understanding and wisdom. Like maybe they've gone up, but they didn't quite know what it meant. And now this gives them more understanding, more context to text, more context to magical systems. Okay, that's Gnosis. So to quote Solar, we're engaging in a noetic process. So that's what I think Turn Thunder into Diamond is. It's a noetic process. And what you do with those seeds, which is why Netzach is not on the pillar of formation, is up to you. It's up to your will. Yes, Joshua, please go ahead.
Oh, yeah. And I had another thought relating to that you triggered in my mind. So is this also analogous then to the lightning path? And is that Sephiroth connection that you were talking about, Netzach and Hod, is that connection present there on that lightning path?
Yes, it is, Joshua. I just had to think through it. Yes. But I actually am liking this idea that the lightning and the dragon path should actually be interconnected. Like everybody loves to talk about climbing down the tree, especially lately. That's like not lately, but in the last maybe 20, 30 years. The big thing is to climb down the tree because obviously they're using it as a metaphor for the Kalachakra tree. And that's so popular with, all the young edgelords in the world. But the reality is, as I've always said, as Matto says, as Solar has talked about, as you and I have discussed for many hours, Joshua, you engage in the same kinds of processes of consciousness through the Sephir itself. So through the tree of life, through the tree of knowledge, you already experience all those klapothic things. You really do. They really appear for you there. So it's not that it's a pointless exercise. I actually don't think that anymore. I used to be much more dismissive. I think that if for someone who's more experienced with the Sephra first, it can be useful to go back and look at what Lurius was saying, but you do not use the klapothic tree as the formation of your understanding. So it should be secondary because that's all it is. It's just an idea. That's all it was ever meant to be. Just simply an idea, simply a container for those ideas that already appeared. Yes, Matt, please go ahead.
So if you think about it, we have biases, right? Whenever you learn something new, let's say you learn about a subject or whatever, you have a bias to every time you remember that subject, you remember it in the way that you probably was first taught about. So if you learn that, I don't know, some type of food is bad for you, when you first get to know about it, then you get that bias. And then it's harder to overcome it, especially if you learn about this when you're just starting out. So in the same way, imagine that you're trying to learn about the tree, and then the first thing you learn about it is all the perversions of the tree, right? So it's probably not going to be the best because now you're attached. Every time you think about Malkuth, for example, you're going to think about the perversion of it, and not like as in, for example, the Matrix. Oh, everything is like we are in a fucking like crazy like prison or whatever, right? That's a perversion of the thing. You're not thinking about it in the, let's say, the beautiful way that Malkuth is like the kingdom, the thing that you should protect, the material part of it, and so on and so on. So like Jin is saying, sure, they exist, but it's not like you should be necessarily putting your focus into it. Like what I personally like to do is try to see it sometimes where I am maybe using that. So I should correct it, right? Like if I'm using the thing in a perverse way, I probably should correct it. So that's maybe the usage that I'll try to do, but that's pretty much it. I don't necessarily try to work with the klifas, right? With the perversions. At least that's the way I see it. It's like the absence of the energy there. I think I sent to Jin the other day the example of like an oyster. So like after you eat the oyster, you just have the husk, the thing there, which had life before but doesn't have anymore. So that's like, what do? You just throw it in the trash, you don't use it anymore. So that's at least how I personally try to go about it.
Yeah, I think that's perfect, Matt. I really do. I mean, Solar's in the room, so if I fuck up Solar, I'm sorry. But because I've already said this like a year ago, I'm sure Solar heard it. So I don't exactly remember how I said it, but I think I actually said it better than I'm going to say it tonight. But we'll try. I'll try. I'll be positive. Okay, be a magician of my own words. But no, I think the klipas are skandhas. So when you clear exactly what Matt said, like you're clearing the sort of negative aggregation, you're clearing that out of your mind, so your consciousness. So like the perversion or the negative vessel, not negative in space, but a vessel that's imperfect in some way, because all vessels are in some way imperfect. But maybe this one's a little more imperfect because it's a little more aggregated. There's holes in it. You can't carry the quicksilver fluid if you have a hole in the bottom of your wine jug or whatever. Okay, or your skull cup. So yeah, the vessel has to be at least a working container. So I do think I agree with what Matt said. So I'm saying that. And I think from a Buddhist perspective, you can easily make this argument that like skandhas and klipas are, at least there's an interrelationship. So when you're clearing them in practices, you are also like doing the same thing. You're kind of like overcoming those five, what we would call five poisons, or the five maras, the five klesha maras, or three, but it's really five. Hello, Lucas, and welcome. So yeah, I think I agree with that. However, I know I'm going to sound really edgelord tonight. I have discovered that sometimes there are useful ideas, we'll say, within some of the Klapothic ideas. Not every single one I think is like, okay, I'm not talking about the demonology or the any of that, nothing of that. Simply in, as I'm saying, simply in the ideas, like something for me that helped me move through Hesed a little better, or maybe a little more precisely, or perhaps I'll even make it very Kabbalah, and I'll say with a greater clarity, is to understand that coldness is actually sort of the inverse of loving kindness. But it's not because I want to lean into coldness, but because I think that it can be a useful dialectical tool to utilize when you are being overly. There are times where we perceive ourselves to be acting with mercy or loving kindness, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we are. It's not skillful. So what can be more skillful sometimes is to have a stronger sense of indifference. Now, this is not perfect because obviously I'm saying, I'm saying Hesed and Gevra must be in dialectical synthesis. Yes, I agree. Obviously, I've said this many, many, many times. You can go back and listen to any space, and I've said it a million times in those spaces alone. So I still agree with that, 100%. But I also think that sometimes you can move the light along with some of those inverse ideas. Now, I'm not saying inversionary. I'm just saying it will help your consciousness move through some of the complications. Maybe they're your own complications. Maybe they're your own aggregates. So I'm just saying there is an idea which I think that can be useful. But I'm not talking demonology. I'm not talking spirits and nothing like that. Nothing evil, nothing weird. I'm just talking about thinking through things in your own mind, in your own consciousness. I saw Monty. I'm sorry, Monty. Please go ahead if you have anything to say. Please do.
Hey guys, apologies in advance. I'm kind of at the beer garden right now, and it's on the street, so it's a little bit noisy. So if you hear anything, then my apologies. But Jin, I really liked what you had to say there. Also, hi everybody. I really liked what you said there about the be indifferent and kind of have like a callousness to you. Excuse me. I think the time for empathy is pretty much over, and I think that the 15-year campaign of demoralization and trying to brute fist the square peg round hole of empathizing with people who you'll never meet, see, or ever interact with, is outlived its welcome. But something that I wanted to kind of get the panel's opinions on is, it's a long weekend for me. Again, no one's beating the Jewish allegations here. I have 2 days off next week for the, I forget what holiday that is. But I'm going to be doing mushrooms tomorrow. And I kind of wanted to get the panel's take on ego death and through like psychedelic means. I don't know if that really made sense, but again, if anyone can figure it out, it's you guys.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to let Solar go, and then if Solar wants to respond, then I'll let Matt respond. Then obviously, well, whomever. If it's Joshua next, then Joshua next, or Matt, or whatever. But I'll go last, so I'll just say that. So Solar can go first, or next, and then I'll go last.
Hey guys, yeah, sorry I can't participate fully tonight. Working when I normally wouldn't be, just to make up for the holiday. So it's cool to be here. Cool. Thanks all for taking the time. It's nice to come together in some form. Yeah, all I was gonna say. Well, first of all, Chag Sameach, to all the homies out there for Shavuos next week or whatever. Again, not beating the allegations, but no, I just want to say with the clipholytic stuff, man. I feel like we have to differentiate a little bit, because as I've been trying to like get my arms around kind of contemporary like left hand path stuff, at least like what I see on the interwebs, as well as like working with different groups at kind of like different preliminary levels, I see kind of like two things, right? So there are the like anti-cosmic people who tend to lean more into the like, hey bro, we're literally doing demonology kind of stuff. So it's sort of odd, right? It's like the same people, they call themselves anti-cosmic, but yet they sort of reify the external fixed existence of demonic entities far more. Anyway, and I'm like mutuals with some of those people. I'm sort of like interested in what they're doing, but I have absolutely no context for that type of a spiritual project. I have very little interest in it, right? Like I'm not trying to set up an altar with like blood and skulls and shit. It's just that doesn't involve me. Like, Godspeed or whatever, demon speed, I guess. So there's that, right? And then there's the other side of things, which is essentially like Kabbalistic like path working, but like goth themed. And like I've spoken a little bit critically of this, and I kind of want to like amend what I've said. So I've referred to it as basically just that. And I don't think that's quite fair. And Jin, you kind of spurned this. Is I think that you can see things from a slightly different and perhaps enhanced perspective when you're approaching things sort of through the negative lens, like, right, like sort of coming at the sphere sort of like from the bottom, right, instead of like from the top, just to use a weird spatial metaphor. But what I think you then have to consider is, what tools is this system or this organization, this temple, whatever it is, like whatever, like clephotic like work you're doing, right? Like what tools are being given to you to better process and confront whatever you're doing, like in that sphere or that path or whatever, right? Because what I've found, and I'm not going to shit on any particular organization or whatever, but just broadly, what I've found is a lot of the sort of quote unquote unique tools that they would give you to engage in that work is a total jumbled mishmash of like new age ideas, and then some like early 20th century like Western kind of appropriations of Tantra. I don't mean like appropriation in the gay sense. I mean it just like people who had a very sketchy understanding of the sort of like grammar of Tantra, as a lot of people did in the late 19th, early 20th century Anglo world, right? They're sort of like those approaches that haven't really been modernized or fleshed out a lot more. There's a lot of Kundalini shit, just because everyone seemed to be really into that like 10 years ago. So that's just like everywhere. Okay. So you have like a lot of everything, and you're sort of just given this soup to then say, okay, go do the work, without a lot of structure, usually without a lot of oversight. And so at that point, I would just encourage people to like just be sort of honest and objective, neutral as you can be, and say like, what is this actually doing for me? Besides the cool like goth theme like stuff, right? Like besides the sort of LARPy element, which may help you get into it, like, is this actually helping me like do any of the work better? Like, I don't know. I've yet to really see that. And again, like, I don't mean that as a challenge. I'd encourage people to, follow your dreams and whatever speaks to you, and send me your positive results. Like if you find something that's actually like doing something new. But again, I've yet to find it. I don't know.
I'll just respond really quickly. Yeah, I totally agree everything you said. Like if I sounded like I didn't agree with that, I do agree with that. I just think that it is like it is the perspective and view, right? Like you're just changing it slightly, you're altering it slightly. So maybe like those sort of aggregate ideas that you have of something, the aggregate perceptions that you have, you can clear them easier by understanding sort of it through a different angle. I don't know. I think that's interesting. But I agree with you. I think it's so weirdly uneven. Like if you Google a Kabbalah tree right now, you might not get the perfect tree with the perfect colors and all the path names and all the, Hebrew correspondences and everything perfect, but you can pull up a pretty good tree. You could do like a what would have been like a plus, let's say, or at least an A, like an 85% correct tree. That I would be like, okay, it's good. Doesn't mean it's perfect, doesn't mean it's like complete, but the klipa is almost like the inverse of that. It's like 99% bullshit. And it's inconsistent. The OG material doesn't match the new material. So I do appreciate that. So you distinguish them, Solar. Like I'm not anti, as I think everyone knows, I'm not anti the contemporary left hand path sort of understandings and for everything. But the anti-cosmic thing I'm very against, because I find this to be very like radically Shramana, radically rejecting of the material experience, which I don't radically reject. I take a non-dual view. It's both. Yeah, we live on the garden and we live on the carnal ground, but I don't think of it as a prison. I think it is what you make of it. That is how I've always thought of it. I think Buddhism, that's how I understand Buddhism to work. That's how I've always thought of it. Like Tantra is there for you. It's there for you to rectify. And then once you rectify, maybe you'll never finish rectifying, but at least it's an option. You can amend your karma. You don't have to stay stuck in astrological like indebtedness. This is something that really has bothered me like immensely for the entire time I've been on Twitter, is the state of astro and occult Twitter. It's like they want you to fuck up, and I'm not saying they do, but maybe it's out of ignorance. But there are times where I think that there are clearly klipas in the knowledge that they are trying to, I don't know, tell you or say that they have above you, and there's no fruit in it. It's like it's nothing. It's worse than nothing. It's like it's the negation, really. So that's what I agree. Anti-cosmic Gnosticism does not make sense to me at all. Never did. I was like, okay, so if you want to believe in the primordial Barbello, if you want to be a Barbarite, that's totally fine. But as you know, Solar, like we resolve this. Like this is not a question for us. It's like she gets resolved in her own consciousness through Buddhism, through Dharma. That's it. Primordial goddess has different stages of consciousness through which she climbs a tree as Tara, as green Tara, as we always say, the very like perfect negative space that would be Hesed, bodhicitta, loving kindness, right? Green, blue green, acacia blue green. And so she climbs a tree. And there are other kind of iterations, or like you could say meta mythologies, where she climbs a tree in other forms, like Vajrayogini or Vajravarahi or Dhumavati or Baglamukhi, like all the ones that we've talked about. Like they're different iterations, but it really comes down to like how you perceive it, your consciousness, like your way of thinking of the world, your view, and like what angle are you looking at. And I don't mean that in like a super like order of trapsoids way, but I also think it's a funny nod to that, of course. But I do think that there is something obviously angular about the tree. And so this is something that Joshua brought up, like the lightning path and the dragon path. Well, the dragon path has a certain flexibility, right? So there's a certain non-duality to it, and lightning is also non-dual in its essence because it's plasma, and it's kind of empty. It makes a sound, but it is not in and of itself the sound. It's sort of, lightning is special because there's something like almost post phenomenological about it. So that's why I use it as a metaphor for like higher ideas. That's why everyone else uses it as a metaphor, and not just a metaphor, because there is like a experiential quality to lightning, but it's very ineffable. It's hard to articulate. Sometimes you can do it. Sometimes I can do it. Sometimes I can't. But but God is really, whatever you're talking about. If you're talking about God, or you're talking about like Buddha nature or whatever, Rigpa, that is so ineffable. It's ineffable beyond ineffable. You're fucking it up just by placing a word on it. That's why lightning is a great metaphor, because it's mysterious and it's empty and it travels through space and it sort of tears the fabric of our consciousness because it has the big thunderclap but it's but it's also something that is in of ourselves that we recognize. There's something greater about it. There's something powerful about it, powerful that seems about the natural world, but we also know that it's sort of like it's beyond the garden. That's what I think is really interesting. It sort of tells us that there's something beyond the garden. There's also something beyond our own minds and the ways we think of things. So that's why, that's why it's a metaphor for Vajra. That's why it's a metaphor for Buddhism. That's why it's a metaphor for like the weaponry of God. Now, when the Randall Carlson types do discuss this, and I'm not trying to pick on anyone, and Solar. It's just that when they talk, when they talk about sometimes the Vahanas and the Vamanas and the ancient alien cargo called spaceships, quoting JJ Vance, not the vice president. It is. I just feel like they know better. I feel like okay, so I'll use my favorite example, David Icke. Like when he's talking about Saturn Moon Matrix, like you totally understand what he's talking about, Solar. Matt totally understands. Joshua totally understands. He's totally talking about Kabbalah. It's just Binah Yesod, time expressed in the 9. Come on. Saturn Moon Matrix, it's not. Time exists in your mind. How can that be a matrix? I mean, maybe it is a matrix. Maybe it's a crystal matrix. But it can be it can be complicated or as uncomplicated. I do not believe the world is an archonic prison, because I believe the archons are magicians, and I also believe they're ourselves, and I also believe they are men. I don't really care if there are Nephilim giants and all of that. But I don't really believe in that either. I'm very anti-supernaturalist in that way, which is maybe good or not. I'm not sure. Okay, Joshua, please go ahead.
I was going to be brief because it related to time. I heard recently somebody talk about how John Dee had stumbled onto some discovery that time was actually going backwards. So, or something of that sort. And so, sometimes you hear about people talking about time speeding up or whatever, when in fact it might be something like how water drains, and so in a sense that we're going to a point of origin, which is very Ouroboros, right? I'd say maybe it does that every age or something. Who knows? I don't know.
Okay, I'm going to be really quick because I see 2 hands. I saw Monty, and then we'll have Matt go. I'm so glad you said that, Joshua, because why? Time is perceptual. Benah Hesed. What was the last space I talked about? I said, this is the most interesting, understudied relationship on the tree. I don't know if it's the most misunderstood or ununderstudied, but it's an interesting, it's a relationship that I'm very fascinated with. Perception and time, perception and the mind, right? So I think that there's when people talk about like the timeline shifting, is your perception shifting perhaps? Maybe you're increasing the amount of revelation. Maybe you're breaking klipas. That can also be apocalyptic, right? Very literally apocalyptic. So, I don't know. Interesting. Okay, Monty, please go ahead.
Okay, so the time is actually going backwards. The John Dee thesis is actually something that I'm very fascinated with. Walter Benjamin, who is this like German idealism philosopher that I used to like a lot, he goes and describes the angel of history of this statue, essentially barreling forward through time and space as we know it. Where its finger is pointed towards the future, but its head is faced backwards, looking into the past. And I think that this has a very interesting relationship when it comes to things like nostalgia, and how the more that we go in, like, memorialize and commemorate the past, the more we're actually progressing in that direction rather than barreling forward into the future. And I think it's an important, not important, but I think it's an interesting way of consuming the way that we are moving throughout history, and how you can actually make the argument that we are going back in time instead of forward. And again, I think that's part of the whole Hyperborean project, is actually looking forward and not relying on the fossils and relics of the past to, you know, bog us down into these self-repeating cycles upon cycles. Like, the way we escape the Kali Yuga is by going and, like, going full centrifugal force velocity in one direction, and, like, just pick the direction and go. But yeah, that's all I got.
No, you're 100% right, Monty. That was a great way to express that. It was it was exactly what I was thinking. I mean, that's what the Aeon of the Daughter was. It was like letting you all know that some of you already knew. Like, if you read some of the tantric texts, you get it. So that's the reality. There's the Arthurian legends point to this. There's so much anime. I talked about the series Scrap Princess. Been writing with that mangaka for like almost like 2 months now. And like, all I said in my first message, obviously he doesn't I don't read Japanese, and he doesn't really speak English. He probably can read it, but I wrote like Aeon of the Daughter, Epinoia of Nuria, Hypostasis of the Archons. Are these things in your series? And so then he responded with a much longer message. So it's just interesting that all of these kinds of things, it's like this. That's what I love about the Aeonic cycles, and using that sort of as a vessel or vehicle for that idea. Because like the Aeon is like what we believe it is. If you believe it's the degraded like Kali Yuga, and like, or like we're like doing like homosexual Hellenic like Bacchus worship, or I famously hate that guy, the Thornless Rose guy. I think is like, I hate that, all that. I don't know, it's so fucking weird. Anyways, the point is like, what do we believe in it? Like, do we have single pointedness in our collective will? And I think that it would be interesting to see, as maybe a meta political project solar, if we could be single pointed in a will, at least people powerful enough to alter maybe timelines or like traverse space. I don't know. Interesting. Okay, Matt, please go ahead.
So on the topic of time going backwards, just a very cool insight is that when you see the eras, right? We went from Pisces to now into Aquarius. But usually people go Aries to Taurus, Gemini, and so on, so on. So Aquarius should be before Pisces, not the other way around, right? So before Aquarius, Pisces, that's how we are counting the eras, and then before Pisces, Aries, and so on, so on. So it's kind of like the eras are going backwards, apparently. So you could make an argument that that's kind of already proof that time is in fact going backwards. And then whenever we reach a certain point of technology, either everything dilutes itself and then we start over again, or whatever happens, right? And then again, you can see stories of fucking floods or whatever things happening, and then having to start it over again and again and again and again. So you can make an argument for that. It wouldn't be so far-fetched.
I mean, again, Aeon of the fucking Daughter, like primordial and new. The 4 and the 5 brought into rectification in the 9. It's perception and discernment at the same time. So that's basically what it is. It's like but I actually do believe that the Aeon has changed. I actually do believe that the Yuga and the Kalpa have shifted. I actually do believe that. But I also agree that it's a metaphor. But I also agree that there's astrological things happening that correlate to the things that I believe. So I think there's a material, phenomenological reality to these things. But I also think there's a noetic idea. I think that there's a deeper tantric idea, and I think it's a metaphor for other things. So, and then I also think that's what is Hyperborea. Hyperborea is like the reimagining of America the Babylon, but not America the Babylon the whore. It's reimagining America the Babylon as the daughter. At least Welcome to Hyperborea. Maybe Aeon of the Daughter wasn't about that, but Welcome to Hyperborea is. Okay, yes, Solar, please go ahead.
Yeah, maybe it's just because I've been kind of circling back and re-immersing myself in the sort of like Madhyamaka and Yogacara sort of traditions, like the core text that I sort of skipped over in my initial pass. But thinking about timeline shifting, there's always one of the, at least as I encounter this, in social media, a lot of the discussion, people like associating aeon shifts, timeline shifts with these sort of like artifacts of the past, right? The one that always, the original one, I think, as this meme went around, right, was the Bernstein Bears, right? And there was like Kazam. There were like a few things, right? The Mandela effect, but like pop culture references, right? And those I think are particularly interesting to me, because I feel like even though they're usually inconsequential, right? Maybe Nelson Mandela literally dying or not like would have mattered slightly, but certainly like the pronunciation spelling of a children's book series is irrelevant to everyone, right? But it's this idea where people, even for this inconsequential thing, sort of they have a moment where they realize that they were living in a certain version of reality and they did not perceive that version of reality to be incomplete or deficient or quote unquote not real in any way. Right. And then for whatever reason, like, social media discussion happens. And then they realize all of a sudden, right, that like, oh, I'm quote unquote not really living in that reality. I'm living in some other reality. Again, not that that's radically different if we're talking about like, the names of pop stars or whatever. But the idea is that like people have this weird, it's like the Wile E. Coyote, right? Like running off the edge of a cliff and not realizing it, right? And these discussions, these little artifacts of the the erased timeline or whatever, are, I think, like at a conceptual level, they represent people confronting the fact that they are participatory creators in their reality to a much much greater degree than they understand or that they are comfortable with. And then we laugh it off, right? Especially when it's sort of banal and irrelevant. But I think there's an inherent discomfort there, right? I think that like most people are not ready to engage or understand themselves in a world or in some kind of existence in which they have that sort of creative and participatory role, right? In producing the reality that they then engage with and sort of subjectively engage with others in. And so people, they run back to the cliff, right? I don't know if Wile E. Coyote ever actually gets to make it back or if he just falls every time, right? But that's the instinctual reaction, certainly when it matters, is to sort of, you get the pit of your stomach, you realize that you're in the air and you dart back, right? But I think there's a certain sense, and for I think 2020 was this on a large scale. We've sort of had enough glitches piling up, or there, and as we sort of perceive our society drifting into more and more sort of isolated spheres of meaning, right, that are irreconcilable with one another on these sort of wider, like partisan or sort of social lines. We're sort of being thrust into the world, trying to, again, kind of pin this to some conceptual stuff. We're having to confront the fact that we live in a world that we actually like create, right? That there's not a stable, solid, objectively out there sort of world that we can all refer to if we just get the terms right, or come to some kind of consensus agreement told by the experts that this is the way things really are. And so to me, these things are really exciting, even at the banal level, not actually talking about like yuga cycles or things like that. Not that I'm opposed, but I think like just at a really sort of like low level, there's something interesting happening here.
No, you're 100% right. I mean that's 100% true as well. It's just like what level of reality. But you're 100% right. I mean, but social media is the ARG. That is like what we've always said. Like Aeon of the Daughter is about the time of decoherence. Like there is no greater time of decoherence than right now. So we have to look through the flux, look through the smoke, figure the fuck out what we all believe. Do we believe in something consensual? Do we believe in something futuristic? Do we believe in something utopian? Like what's the fucking project? Like I agree. I'm down for something. I'm like let's fucking go. Is it like Turtle Island? Is it like the unification of America? Is it like looking forward to the Satya Yuga like Trump always says? Like I don't fucking know. I don't know. I think it's a fucking interesting idea. I like that it I like that the what Solar is saying, what Monty said. It is kind of like we can will something into reality if we chose, and you do will your life. and to a large degree. Now, Anne of the Daughter says love over will. Now, in the last or the two spaces ago, I said that exact phrase, and really strangely, when I listened back on the plane, I actually heard love under will. So I don't know if it was just a technical thing, but I did hear a difference. So let me just be clear. Love over will. So what is love? Love is emptiness. It's like the infinite capacity. That doesn't mean you have to feel it right now. That doesn't mean you have to, but you have to try. It's capacity. Capacity for loving kindness. That means you do have it, regardless of things. So I'm going to let Joshua go and let the cat out of my office, but I apologize. Joshua, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. And meow meow. I was going to comment on something Monty said. So that statue with the face looking to the past and the finger pointing to the future, that actually is a meme, right? Isn't that like the soy jack guy like pointing to something? That is it, right? So I thought that was kind of funny, but at the same time, it made me think of how the face might be like Saturn or Janus looking to the past, very January-esque, while Mars maybe pointing with the index finger to the future. Mars maybe being like Aries, like the beginning of each year, being like that newborn year, right? So I just wanted to comment on that. And then you mentioned about the centrifugal force to just blast to the threshold or whatever. Well, that reminded me of King David's sling and how he slayed the giant Goliath by hitting him in the forehead. The forehead's the temple, right? Where you have the third eye, the crown, all of that. And so he achieved Netsack victory over him, which makes me kind of think of giants, even if maybe you can see them as like klipas, right? As like the kind of like when they, I think Amalek is referred to this in a sense like a collective adversary of some sort. So even if they weren't real, they could be real in that way, right? As personified as like a giant or whatever. But Goliath did apparently exist. So I would just wanted to point that out, that you made me think of that and how powerful that is, because you're breaking the sound barrier when you whip that sling and you hear that crack like a whip. That's actually breaking the sound barrier. So something very there's physics and stuff in there too. But the other thing you asked about mushrooms, I think it was. So I just wanted to weave on that for just a moment. So the question first would be if it was red or blue, because the red, I think, takes you to the father or the grandfather for judgment, whereas the blue would take you to the mother for nurturing or rebirth. And so ego death is achieved if you take a great enough amount to break the self or the ego. It's like the klipa kind of thing, a husk or something. You're breaking the husk of your ego, so to speak, I suppose. And so having that, finding the mind at the beginning would be the goal, I suppose. And to kind of go to Dune, where the Mentats tried to find their mind at the beginning, and so they ate the spice and they used it in a different way, right? Where the Bene Gesserit would take the water of life to go back to the beginning, but in a different way, right? Through their, I guess, female mitochondrial DNA, so to speak, maybe. But the Kwisatz Haderach was he who did both. So one thing I have done is combined red and blue, so to speak. And it is a more middle path thing. So it reminds me of respecing your character in an RPG. So you can kind of think of it that way, because if you microdose with the mushroom, you achieve small progress over time. That's paired with whatever habits you're going through. So if you think about it approaching it from like an Abramelin ritual perspective, where you're microdosing, that's one way to look at it. But if you're taking like a heroic dose, you want to look at that as more like maybe ego death. But the difference being like, do you go through trimming a hedge and bonsai, style, or do you uproot it and transplant it, or how radical is the change? But the best
Wrecking
advice,
ball, baby.
yeah, the best advice I could give, maybe though, is to have is to fast, maybe, or have a light diet of just fruit, so that you've got plenty of vitamin C and nutrients and stuff to have the best overall experience. But where I find season kind of just ended here, and I find them around ash trees, which is very prominent in the Nordic traditions. So I think wherever you find them, or wherever they're supposed to be found, is symbolic also. So you might want to read up on the species to see like what tree it's companion plant with.
Sorry, boys. Okay. I think Solar came up, hand up first. I apologize, Matt. We'll let Solar go, and then Matt for sure. I won't even take a turn.
Yeah. So I just want to say quickly, I think we should maybe put a little more respect on Crowley's name if he's literally interfering with your recordings from the great beyond. Just want to put that out there, right? He's changing your phrasing back. So yeah, we're still in the age of Horus or whatever, dude. Sorry about that. Anyway, yeah, no. So just on the note of the Walter Benjamin Sojak, people should really check out that essay. It's the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction, right? So I think I've referenced and recommended people read The Origin of the Work of Art by Heidegger, right? So you should read the Heidegger, and then you'd be perfectly set up, because you'd understand that that art is not just art, but it's especially like the original art, which was the architecture of the temple, was literally is this thing that sort of justifies and reinscribes the life world of a people, its concepts, its values. It's this sort of anchor point between heaven and earth, between man and the world, right? Ideally, right? Like a good total work of art is that, right? So you'll be then primed to think about the changing function of art as we enter an age, right, where art is mechanically copied and reproduced, right, where it loses its sacred, sacral, ontological, or theological function, right? Anyway, it's like I'm laughing at the Sojak, archangel of history, weeping at the wreckage of history piled up at its feet. But like seriously, it's a very important essay that if you're at all inclined, you should maybe check out. Right. In the same way that I would say, if you want an exposure to the non-self, the emptiness of self and things, but like you don't want to go all in on like Buddhist ontology or whatever, and like check out Madhyamaka, right? Well, Derrida's the structurality of structure, right, will basically accomplish like the same thing, but completely outside of that sort of like cosmological context, right? Like, so there are multiple entryways to like, some of these ideas that are really foundational for our space. So just throwing that out there.
No, I appreciate that, Solar, because I have to say that when I became like more red pill than based, I kind of took all of that, we'll say, more niche knowledge from university, and I was like, oh, fuck all that stuff. Like, it can't be true, right? But at the same time, I kind of, obviously, I draw from things and my experience there and all of that. So I appreciate you, and I think that that is a bedrock element, is that you can translate it into the kind of, I'm not calling you post left, but there's like a post left quality to some of the engagement with those kind of thinkers and writers. So I appreciate that. I think it's really important for people to hear. Like, yeah, you're right. It is not just contained in one thing. Like, the truth is not just contained in one thing, but like, what kind of truth is it also? Is it primordial or is it relative? What is the view you have going on, going into it, and looking at it and perceiving and understanding its context? So I agree. I just think that, like, don't to use Solar's metaphor of art. If you see art, it is not, should not be totalizing of your worldview. Like, I think this is what also Monty was saying. We no longer live in the longhouse. We no longer live in the totalizing like worldview. We've broken a lot of that klipa, actually. I think collectively, I think maybe intentionally, I think we were framed, not framed, but you could say our arrow was pointed in a specific direction, and like many people decided that that would be a useful sort of project of consciousness. So in a way, for many people, those klipas were broken. So I just, we live in a decoherent age. I'm sorry, I'm being repetitive, but I think that that's what is also like what it's about. It's not just contained in any singular idea, perhaps, but maybe it's contained in the many if we discern what the many are. Okay, Matt, please go ahead.
So, Monty, not sure if it's the first time you're doing such a thing, but anyways, I'll share what I think about it and my experiences, and I hope it helps you. So, think about it this way, right? It's like we most likely, most of us are with our televisions turned off, right? So we have a television inside our brains and it's turned off. Now, we can start to turn it on when we are sober. It's hard, but we can. There's a lot of practices and so on. So, like at first, you start the television, then there's no signal. Then you start to get some signal, starts getting better and better and better, and so on until you don't see a television anymore. It's just part of reality. So, with any of these substances, it's kind of like you just get a remote control and you turn it on, but then you cannot turn it off for a while. So, so sometimes you feel like you are in the show, right? That you were watching. So then it's like, okay, who the fuck was I? That's what I can try to explain the ego death thing. It's kind of like now you're in the show, you don't remember who the fuck was Monty anymore. You're in there. But anyways, what personally I would suggest. So last time I did something like this was with ayahuasca, which is actually pretty similar depending on the type of mushroom you're doing. It's just that it takes longer. It's like a slower thing. So ideally, you don't want to control the experience because you can treat it as kind of like again a television. So it's kind of like you're getting the tickets to a ride or even a roller coaster ride. I think it's a nicer way to see it. So you're getting tickets and you don't want to go, and then the thing is like at the top, and then when it's going to go down, you're like, no, stop! I'm gonna go out. You're not gonna go out. Either you accept and you enjoy the ride, or you try to get it out, and then it will get itself out from you, like you're throwing up and so on. Maybe with mushrooms that doesn't happen so often. At least I don't remember having nausea and stuff with mushrooms. With ayahuasca, most definitely. But basically, if you kind of try to give it a shape, not in the sense like, again, to be literal with the thing, right? You don't want to create a husk, but just an idea that you can anchor yourself, and then, bro, the ride is most then enjoyable. And then if you can take notes of what you're perceiving and so on, then you can get that back whenever you're sober. You can get to the same state whenever you're sober. That's, to me, the trick. It's like not relying on the substance forever. It's like at some point you understand, okay, wait a second, I can fucking turn on the TV. Yeah, sure, that helped me the first time, but now I can turn it on and off and so on. So I think that's something to keep in mind.
Yes, I agree with all of that, Matt. It is a key. It is just one key to the mind, and you shouldn't rely on it. But it can be a fun key, and it can also be a useful and fruitful key. So I agree with everything Matt said. Monty, please go ahead. I'm sorry.
First off, I just want to say thank you to everybody who answered my question. It's I actually do appreciate it. Now, I'm so sorry. Again, I'm on the street right now, so please forgive me. But it's not the first time I've ever done it. When I was in college, I did it quite a lot, and I haven't done it since. And now I graduated 2017, so it's been a while since I've done it. But I really like what you said about the roller coaster. Quite frankly, I have some personal. This is not my soapbox, but I have some personal hangups that I kind of just need to like air out and like look in the face. And I find that like being able to break down the barriers and like ride that roller coaster of like what exactly is my problem, it will do me a lot of good. And I do think that there is like some kind of like metaphysical practices within that. And I don't know. I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm a little scared, but at the same time, it's I know once I'm on the ride for 4 hours, it's going to be the best. And then you throw up at the end and then you're fine. So at least that's my experience. But yeah, I just want to say thanks everyone for answering the question. Thank you.
You're most welcome, Monty, and I will say that I agree. I think that's what the whole project is. It's like, if anything, I'm not really a Gnostic, but it's sort of, yeah, I am. But I think I'm a Theurgist. I think if you want to, I'm pro-Theurgy. I'm like, like we might have many rebirths, and I obviously believe that, like, really deeply believe it. Like, as primordial truth, I believe we have rebirths. But this is our life right now, so we have to make the most of this. I'm not always perfect. I'm not saying this from like some Clydesdale like position. Like, oh, I know all the secrets. I'm not saying it like that at all. I'm saying as an imperfect person, imperfect magician. I'm saying like, we have this opportunity right now. So let's do something with it, and let's make of something with it. And that is engagement with like more esoteric or wisdom science ideas and things and practices and all that. Wisdom and method in union. It's just like it's a lot of it is, we're in an interesting time or aeon because we can think of these things without like so extreme, like outside the confines, John, like the breaking of Saturn, outside the confines of institutions. That's kind of the power of this aeon. Okay, yes, Matt, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because in a way, Monty's question relate to what we are talking about here, the Kemetic American. Like, at least I see that in Brazil, for example, which is still America, by the way, just South America, a lot of the syncretism comes from, I'm going to use the word cults for lack of a better word, around psychedelics. So you have like, for example, the Santo Daime in Portuguese, maybe Saint Daime, I think the same name would be. So it's basically people realizing, like, not indigenous people realizing the power of the in this case ayahuasca, and then creating like rituals out of this, right? So but then they start to create the syncretic things out of this, like they start to bring out Catholicism because, well, Brazil was colonized by Portugal, and then the African stuff, a lot of it as well. So then you have this mixture now of the indigenous attributes, like the stories, the myths, and so on, with the African ones, with the Catholic ones, and all of this like becomes a mixture. And then you have many other cults, like you have the Jurema, which is another plant. You can also do it with ayahuasca. It's a different experience, but it's all DMT at the end, right? It's just different ratios of it, I guess, and how it's processed by your body. But anyway, and then you have a lot of these like basically rituals and like schools of thought around psychedelics, and it's very crazy, as in like it's a big thing in Brazil. You'll see maybe a guy which, I don't know, it's big on UFC, and then he'll go and do it. A guy which is like a big DJ, and he'll go and do it just because it's open. Like literally, it's legal, for example, in Brazil, both ayahuasca and mushrooms, at least some kinds of mushrooms. They're completely legal, so you can do it. You can go to proper places, shamanic places, whatever. But even before that, nowadays it's kind of like Khalifa. There's a whole business out of these kind of things. But well, the whole history behind it is like, well, you can see that it was a way for them to connect with all the energies or whatever, right? The whole concepts that they would get from these things. So it's I'd say it's a base. I cannot say for like North America how big it is, how important, but I would say for Brazil it's very, very freaking important. Psychedelics, to like how it shaped the whole thing there.
Sorry, I muted myself, or kept myself muted, and I started talking. Yes. So Matt, I think you touched on really important ideas, and I think that, look, this is the thing. Low IQ syncretism is to piecemeal. I'm not making fun of anyone or saying any piecemealing is bad, because I don't think it's bad. I think sometimes it's useful. But I think that sometimes piecemealing can be, it doesn't lead that much higher than where you could already go through kind of like post-conceptual thinking or more non-dual thinking. I think you can get there. I don't think you're doing yourself any favors by piecemealing per se. So I want to be clear in that, like, what I'm often talking about, not always, obviously this is explicitly a syncretic, I don't know, theme, arc, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it's an arc. It's arc 3. So I said specifically syncretic. So, but I'm not always talking about that kind of syncretism, where you're kind of looking at the map and you haven't quite fit together what it should look like. But I'm talking more comparative, because I do believe that there is I'm going to say it solar, like I believe there's like a primordial system or a traditionalist system, not perennialist, okay? It's not quite perennialist, but it's it's something. It's the wheel of time. It's the wheel of time that was spoken about, right? It doesn't, to me, it doesn't matter. Are we going forward? Are we going backward? I don't know. I don't really care. We're going the primordial direction, which is non-dual. So that's what it is, and it's in our consciousness. I know everyone is like very down on the timeline, and it's like, oh yeah, we live in like the worst time. I don't think we live in the worst time. I think we live in a really interesting time. I think there is lots of bullshit. I think there's a lot of bullshit in every time. I don't think it's unique to us. I'm not a millenarian. I always say that, like, don't be eschatological in your mindset, right? Because that, you can never have a true grind set if you think the world is ending tomorrow, right? Like, if you believe that, then it's very hard to plan for the future. So just take it for what it is, dance in the flux, be Diamond Thunder, whatever that is, and yeah, I think you're good. So yeah, I mean, I agree, but that, the time, the thing is, you can be Mahakala, you can be the king of time in your own mind. So take of that and understand that for whatever you want. I think that means you're the master of your timeline, both on and offline. I'm not saying every minute it should be spent in like radical ascetic, like prayer or, Shugendo waterfall baths or whatever. But I think that some of our time probably is wasted in some ways, through we're kind of navigating Ketu. So it's hard. It's a smoky palace, right? So, some things waste our time and some things are worth our time. And it's up to our discernment to like figure out what those things are. And sort of like find the truth in like the application of like a meta politics to the timeline. And I still think it's possible. I think it's a lot harder now. Yes, Monty, please go ahead.
I just love what you said there about the we're living in the best of times, the worst of times. I think, at least from a materialistic perspective, if you are an American right now, this is the most exciting time that we have seen, honestly, since 9/11. I think that a lot of the shibboleths of the society that we're all accustomed and like grown up into, including Canada, by the way, is at reaching a tipping point that is we should be excited about, because I don't fault anyone for thinking that the past like 10, 15 years have been a cultural wasteland. I don't fault anyone for thinking that the sky was falling back in like 2017 and stuff like that. I think that now we finally have like an actual we have traction, and I think that it's very exciting. And right now is the most valuable. Excuse me. Right now, your time is more valuable than ever. I think if you can go and do things now, you will be rewarded tenfold in the future. And whether it be financially, whether it be materially, whether it be politically, whether it be anything. I just think that like now is one of the like coolest and most like interesting times to be active. And I that's what I love about these spaces, is that this is like some of the most like productive, like spiritually at least, times. And I just want all of us wizards here in the chat, all of us are doing the good work. I think it's awesome, and I just wanted to share.
Thank you very much, Monty. Appreciate that. You are obviously part of our spaces, so if you say we're doing a good job, I assume that you're saying it also about yourself. So I will take it, and and all the co-hosts also can take it. Okay, Solar, please go ahead.
Yeah, quick question before my main thing, or point before my main. So I only learned about this like last year. Maybe I'm the last guy to know about this, but I'd always been kind of averse to the like organic psychedelics, right? I'm not saying I've ever done any of this stuff, not admitting to any legal activity on the internet, but because it was so hard to dose, right? Like shrooms, you don't know how much psilocybin you're gonna get in them, and I that always frustrated me compared to like synthetic, like LSD. You know exactly how much you're dropping, right? So apparently there's like a growth market of where they've extracted the psilocybin, which again, like may or may not have any other sort of second order effects products for like really precise dosing. And I would just think if you're so inclined, not necessarily like you, Monty, this weekend, you're already set up. But just for people who have eyed that, but are maybe like, not really looking forward to is this going to be a baby trip or a blow my mind trip or something like that? Well, there are products that are, kind of like rolling onto the market that are, designed to address that with predictable dosing for like psilocybin and peyote. So anyway, I just thought that was pretty cool. And I only just heard about it. So, and not saying I've tried, but whatever. Um, my main thing though was going to be just to connect the Kemetic with the talk of psychs. One of the most productive uses of psychedelics in a sort of meditative context, at least that I've heard about. Again, not that I've done any of this myself, is using them to kind of like stratify what we think of as a sort of like unified self, and to sort of like get like different sort of layers of consciousness and perception, sort of separate enough from one another to be able to actually like engage with like an aspect of yourself, right? And do this kind of like internal work. It's a pretty common idea, right? And it struck me the last time I was thinking about having one of these experiences for myself is that different systems and different traditions have tools of varying degrees of usefulness in actually like making sense of this. So I was recently reading about the Kemetic conception of the soul, right? And the Egyptians sort of had 8 or 9, depending on how you count, different souls, right? And I was particularly interested in the conception of the Ba and the Ka, right? So very briefly, the Ba is like your sort of existential momentum up to this point, right? Like so, like what has been sort of accomplished and accumulated and assumed under the heading of you in this lifetime. And then Ka is sort of the mirror image of that projected into the future, right? It is your telos, it is your end, sort of what you are trying to actualize in the future, right? So you can see the kind of symmetry between those two concepts. And I was thinking, my goodness, that would be if I believed that, and if I were used to thinking about that, that would be a tremendously useful thing to be able to say, take psilocybin and then actually go interrogate my Ba or my Ka, right? To be able to enter into dialogue, either literally or just kind of a noetic dialogue with these different parts of myself, right? To try to gain perspective and access, information and do whatever I wanted to do, right? And so to me, like kind of taking a step back and thinking in meta terms, right? This emphasized the once again the tremendous value of flexibility, right? Because like most of us, and I'm not certainly at this point, even as much as I've tried, like I can't just substitute worldviews and sort of conceptual frameworks like at will completely, right? Like I can't say like now I'm gonna think of this as a Mormon, right, and just like become Mormon for 5 minutes, right? And so being one, like really trying to build that plasticity, right, to file off everything that's unnecessary and to leave a core that is sort of fluid and dynamic and capable in its potential. While at the same time, if you think that there's a system, a worldview, a cosmology, whatever, that would afford you some kind of toolkit, even like opportunistically, even just like purely pragmatically, right? It might be worth investing in that system mentally, right? Like working with it, do meditation that's structured in that tradition, do reading, like actually work with it, right? And try to see one, if it actually can live up to whatever potential you think you've identified at a preliminary stage. And then two, so you can get fluent enough within the system so that you can actually do that work. Because, if you're dropping 600 micrograms of acid, right? If you kind of understand something, but not really, or you kind of think you can operate within a framework, but like maybe not really, like you're just going to get bowled over, right? Like you're not going to have a framework that is solid enough to be able to interrogate and operate within under what we'll call like not necessarily adverse conditions, but difficult conditions, right? Of something like a high intensity psychedelic experience. Okay. Like you need to do the groundwork to get yourself to a point where then you can, if you want to go talk to your ka, right? So to speak, like you have to prepare to be able to do that. And just to like, I don't know, encourage people to be selective in like how they put themselves in a position to be able to do that in the future if you think you might wanna. Because you can't just decide one day and YOLO it. You can try, something will happen, but might not be the best time.
Okay, I thought that was really great. Thank you, Solar. I agree. Like, we have King in the house, so a welcome King from the King of Cups KOK channel. Just want to say that. Thank you for coming. I don't know who this dude is. Leptokinetic. Okay, don't know you, but welcome. So everybody can check out King of Cups. Obviously, Joshua and King often collaborate. So yeah, that's obviously we love that, and like both those gentlemen have been on my show. So there we go. Okay. So I agree with what Solar said. Like, you have to stick to like a pragmatic, like a workable sort of system that you are function. Like, you have to actually do it. It has to be sort of like greater than just like a meta conceptual layer. Can't just be thinking through things. You can't just be like a French philosopher, right? You have to actually, to use a Marxist turn of phrase, you have to do the work. So I really strongly believe this. Praxis is their G. Like, that's what it is. It's doing it every day. And I want to also shout out Shakti and tell her welcome. Shakti, I know you were here a little while ago as well. Thank you for joining us from Japan. Appreciate it. Obviously, Shakti is a Takini Value Lodge member, and thank you so much for coming. You're seen, heard, and appreciated. Okay, so please, Joshua, go ahead.
We kept mentioning work, and I have here a note I wanted to include, so this might be a great time to ask. So in terms of alchemy, there's the great work, and there's this theory about the destiny of America, right? Is that you guys mentioned root races earlier, and so part of the belief is that they've kind of brought all the different races here to America to blend them together to create these vessels to then be able to incarnate, these new batch of souls or whatever. I'm not really entirely familiar with the beliefs, but I think it was Madame Blavatsky and Alice Bailey and the Theosophical Society. I think they had some writings on this, and so we might be in that, right? That and it reminds me of the Babylon working that they was it Hubbard and Parsons did in the Mojave Desert in 1948. So Israel was about the same age as that, and that was about 77 years ago. So I think some of this stuff aligns. And I was curious, could you see? You mentioned the distinction between whore and daughter. So would the daughter be like the Sephiroth version, whereas the Klippa would be like the whore, for instance, in this case, right? It's like, so maybe there's like an attempt to subvert that type of energy and take it over, but it's actually going to be given to, the meek and humble and so on and so forth in the Christian revelation sense, right? That therefore it becomes like the bride of Christ. And there's all these stories in the Bible too about like Rahab marrying Joshua. She was a prostitute. Mary Magdalene with Christ. Anytime we're like, in captivity or going after what the Bible defines as pagan gods or whatever, we're considered whoring or whatever. So I think that very interesting element to that and what that means, like in terms of the crown chakra and liberation from spiritual captivity. And I think that's something that we're experiencing right now too. And I think that locally, that's what is sometimes happening when people maybe forage in their local area for whatever entheogen is there. And so it's a little different everywhere. But I think that certain people are kind of drawn to that in some sense. And those are like maybe in some way, like the crowned, in a sense, shamanistic pastors. But see, that's the element that's kind of missing from organized religion today, is that these people they're not climbing the tree and bringing down the spiritual fruits. But there was a mention about framework when doing these things. I think maybe Solar was mentioning that. And I think that's where Christianity kind of does excel, because we're given what are called the spiritual gifts. And so that allows us to kind of like practice, like you said, the praxis of charity, loving kindness, so to speak, so on and so forth. So we can exercise the fruits of the spirit. And that's like a path up the tree to the crown as well. So I do like systems like that are more complete.
Okay, so you left a lot to think about, Joshua, for sure. I think okay, so let's talk about the daughter just quickly, because that's obviously what I picked up on first, was this idea of, so the daughter is never the whore. Let's just be crystal about this. Never the whore. It's sort of a label of the archons if we're using like a Gnostic framework. Okay. It's a label of the archons that they lied about, sullying thus her reputation through the ages, through time. But it's not really real, it's not foundational, it's not even found within the text. So obviously we can take this and it can have a more occulted or occultic maybe meaning used in esoteric practices. So this idea of the Aishaf Zenunim, the princess of the Klippas, or sometimes called the virgin whore, she who dances erotically. Obviously in Buddhism we resolve this by saying that they're a dakini. So they're empty and they're infinitely compassionate. So yes, they might dance erotically. That doesn't mean anything. It literally does not mean anything. It just means that they dance erotically because they can appear in existence appearance as rajasic, but they're also post gunas. They're post quality, so they're not really erotic. That's our perception of them. So that's a good way to understand the daughter. She's like Sailor Moon. She's like Chibi-Usa. She's light. She's Crystal Millennium Kingdom. She's here and then she's gone. If you want to use a more Buddhist idea, she's the Blazing Girl. She's Kurukula. If you want to use a more Indian example, or a more tantric Indian example, she is Bala Tripura Sundari. She is the daughter. She's hidden from view, but she's there if you sort of have the discernment to sort of know that she is there without constant confirmation. Yes, Solar, please go ahead.
I was just gonna drop another signpost. Since Crowley's come up weird amount today. I was gonna say, so if you want to think about how he conceptualized, right, like not so much the Babylon whore and his whole shtick with that, but I was thinking particularly how he talks about Nuit, right? So and to connect this, because you brought up alchemy earlier, so there's kind of this direct relationship, because for Crowley, Nuit is this sort of like empty, infinitely formable, like full of potential feminine aspect of consciousness, right? That is kind of like parallel, I don't want to say equivalent to, but definitely runs parallel to how the alchemists would describe spirit, right? As Evola drives home, I've mentioned again and again, so I won't go into it, but the point is that spirit is this, the philosopher's Mercury needs to be sort of liberated and set free, but then ultimately it needs to be pinned down by the solar masculine principle, right? You can't let it sort of just float away and evaporate, right? That formless, chaotic void energy, right? The void dragon, Tiamat. I'm trying to bring in some both Crowley and like post Crowley left hand path imagery here, right? Like that sort of like boundless, chaotic, energetic aspect of whether you want to say consciousness or just ontological potential, right? That needs to be pinned down with Hadith, right? In Crowley's system, or the sort of the transcendent idea, in sort of Evoلا's framing, the solar principle of the super individual, right? That is to complete the great work, the transfigured man, right? That vivifies the ashes of Saturn, blah 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 blah, right? So you can kind of go with that in that direction as well, to kind of get to the, I don't know, rather than just kind of going just in the sort of circle of the instability, the unstable duality between like Madonna whore, which will get, that's interesting. That's, I feel like that's been talked to death. But yeah, man. What was that guy's name? Milo Don, fucking the guy who did the Magic of Crowley, the Telema book.
Milo Duquette,
I'm sorry. He just says that he has one of those. He has a magical name. Okay, sorry. That guy. That book is pretty good at just laying out like Crowley's understanding, his sort of like, he's bringing together tantra, a little bit of like alchemy, and then like of course because he's a like Anglican guy, right, or from that family. It's all sort of wrapped in the sort of symbolic language of Western Christianity, right, like high church ritual. So you might find that of interest. The PDFs are everywhere.
I agree. Actually, that is a great book. And let us welcome Sir Tim, who I know was in the room a little earlier. And I'm sorry, Sir Tim. I don't know why. I probably wasn't speaking when I saw you. So welcome, our dear lodge member from the island state. We'll say, a beautiful place. Yeah. Okay. So I totally agree, Solar. That was a great suggestion. It's a great book. He's actually an interesting writer. Like, yeah, I'm not impressed with any Westoid writer's take on Tantra. I'm just being honest. Like, very few. Maybe there's a couple. Obviously, I'm a big Don Webb enjoyer. I'm the first to say it. But I think for most people, just approach it non-dually. Like, I think that's easier said than done, perhaps. But I also think it's like you can find that in balance. There's something really interesting about not going to extremes, like middle pathing it all the way, and just saying, okay, well, like let's look at this as an idea. Let's see where this can conceptually take us in one direction and then the other, and like see what conclusions we can draw from. And I think that is like a useful way instead of like a dichotomy between the maiden and the whore, or the virgin and the whore, or whatever. And I think that is why that text, that specific Gnostic text, Thunder Perfect Mind, makes a lot of sense to me, because it is written how a lot of tantras are written. It's written discursively. It's written sort of like this. It's very radical. It's like talking about like, I am not this, but I'm this. I'm not this. I'm not this. It's like interested in the idea of negation, neither nor dialectic, you could say. So that makes a lot of sense to me. It's also how the Devi Mahatmya Purana is written. So if people want to actually read a really interesting parallel text, that's a really great parallel text, and then go read Thunder Perfect Mind, and you will actually see that there's a great deal of overlap, if not like perhaps parts of the same text, or at least the ideas are similar. So an incredible amount of similarity, okay? And even in the structure. So I think that's really interesting, because then you can understand, because Puranas can be read from a tantric perspective. Yes, completely possible, as long as you understand, you know what you're looking for. And so you can just say, okay, so you have to understand it non-dually. So she's saying, I'm neither of these things. I'm neither in the polarities. I'm between the polarities, because what is the Shakti? She's emptiness. She's Adipar Shakti. She's like outside the cube. She's no longer, she might be Mahamaya, but she's not the one she's not like this archonic force who traps us in. That's not how it's conceived. So it kind of, I think in that way is really something really interesting, because it allows you to see that just because we have specific cultural weight to ideas, not everybody has them. It's not necessarily the twilight meaning of the text. And we can read the Gnostic text with other things in mind, probably because there is a great deal of interrelationship in the Central Asian canon originally. Yes, Solar, please go ahead.
I think I speak for everyone here. I'm going to encourage you strongly to drop the name of that text in chat, rather than trying to replay the recording of this space 3 times to be able to pick out that Sanskrit, you crazy bastard. That would go a long way. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I was typing in the chat. I wasn't not doing anything. Solar, it's posted now. There is something interesting that I've never discussed on any live or any space. Is that, or maybe I did on one of the Anna the Daughters. Bahasa is actually like Bahasa Indonesia is actually constructed on classical Javanese and classical Indonesian more broadly, classical Malaysian. So it has a great deal in common with Sanskrit. And I was wondering, maybe this is a reason, not that my Bahasa is good particularly, but I wonder if this is also a reason why I am naturally inclined to Dharmic things and some of the ideas, because it makes a little more sense to me because I have like a more colloquial context for it. I don't know if it doesn't make sense for everything, but I just wonder, maybe there is something that language, because like Indonesia was it was a tantric nation for over 1,000 years. So I just wonder if there's something embedded in the language that carries with it. It's like the seeds are there. So certainly many Indonesians have believed that classical Javanese is an excellent magical language. Even in the time of its use, it was considered to be an excellent magical language. I don't know. I know that's a tangent, but just something interesting since you brought up, because I'm usually terrible in Hebrew, and not intentionally, just because I am actually terrible in Hebrew. But I also mispronounce a lot of other things, so it's not particularly Hebrew. It's just how I am. But Sanskrit, I'm okay. Not like any great shakes, but I'll make a passable attempt mostly. And also, like, I don't read Tibetan. Like, I can't read Tibetan script like almost at all. But I pray only in Tibetan. So I also wonder, maybe is there a relationship between, like, because I often like Sanskrit prayers the best. Not necessarily Sanskrit prayers or say the prayer in Sanskrit rather than Tibetan, but there's an element of overlapping understanding. So I wonder if there's a part of it. But anyway, Solar dropped out, but hopefully he'll come back. Hopefully it wasn't me rambling. Okay, there, he's back. Good. But anyways, that's all I had. So I guess maybe we'll do a gardening metaphor to sort of, like, we don't have to close out right now. We can still go another 30 minutes. But you know, a thing about Kemetic American, like, Solar took it in the proper direction. I'm not saying Matt and Joshua didn't. Of course they did. But Solar took it in probably the more intellectual direction, where he said specifically, it is, you have to look at these Kemetic, quote unquote, ideas and sort of like apply it to, like, the Hyperborean model. Okay. Really interesting. And I agree. But I think there's also the root working layer, the natural syncretism that is American religion, the natural inclination for Americans, not just Americans, because I'm not just saying, like, Americans. I'm more specifically saying people who, I don't even know who I'm specifically saying as a demographic. Maybe it's just us. Maybe that's it, but it's a element of looking at things and seeing the patterns and sort of underlying structures underneath things and being interested in what those things mean. So I think that gardening metaphors are really great, since like, I live in North America, and many of you do also, although not all of you. But that's okay, because we all have, like, an experiential relationship with the land, whether we are just, like, passive observers of it, or we engage in processes with it. So I think, okay, so I forgot the metaphor I was going to give. I'll think about it. I'm going to let Joshua go. But yeah. Okay, so think about what you guys want to discuss for the next 30 minutes. Like, in what ways do you want to talk about Gnosticism in the American context, and how can we apply it to Hyperborea? I think those are questions you can think about. You don't have to answer those. Think of it in your own ways. Solar, please go ahead.
Oh no, I think Joshua was going to go first.
Oh, Joshua, I apologize. Joshua, please go ahead.
It's cool. I wanted to add another element to what I see as Kemetic America, the land of Kem, which is kind of referring to Egypt, and it's like a Nigredo of sorts, from which greater works are made, and so things like the pyramids and things like the Sphinx and so on and so forth, and this apotheosis of the pharaohs being godlike, which we also see like in Rome and other cultures as well. But I think that somehow we've kind of like copy and pasted that into America, because we're the only country that uses like the 12-inch standard rule. And so that was the length of an arm of the ruler at some point in history and became the standard. And so we've adopted that, whose arm are we using, So, and then the concept of, just the Illuminati in general, who's at the top of that pyramid. It's like those with crowns can be gods, little g, in a sense. And those who just are not awake, right, they become wage slaves or whatever. And so there's this clipophic nature, I think, in a sense, with capitalism and how it operates, and the land of opportunity and freedom, as it were. But freedom's not free, as they say, right? So sometimes it's paid with blood, which we know might relate to alchemy, because in terms of foundation or where to start, there's the the albedo, the whitening of the stone, and then the reddening, so there's blood, right? And so again, I think this links back to like the flag and kind of telling the story of alchemical America, so to speak, but how it ties back to Kemetic in the sense that it's pharaonic, and we even have obelisks, erected in the capital and stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to share that aspect.
I totally agree. I love that, Joshua. Thank you. And I didn't mean to make it sound like Solar was the only one who took it and ran with it. Of course, I obviously appreciate you and Matt greatly. And I think that Matt and I were on the kind of wavelength. And then I'm glad you brought it back to the architecture, because it all comes down to the architecture. So, Solar, please go ahead.
Cool. Yeah. So a couple of things. So there's two things here, and one, I'm probably going to listen to this or think about it, a year or two down the line and just laugh at my ignorance. So this is all provisional. This is just me like off the cuff, right? But it seems like there's this foundational distinction. There's two different kinds of like cults going all the way back, into sort of like human prehistory, right? So you have a sun cult, right? And that is maybe the sort of central motif of the like Aryan, Hyperborean, like Indo-European kind of thing, right? Is that like a lot of it? I don't want to be like overly reductive here. Maybe Evola took this too far. Gunan definitely thought he did. But let's just paint with a broad brush here for 2 minutes, right? So you have this sort of this sun cult spreading on on the Eurasian landmass. And then Egypt is something different. Egypt, well, it definitely gets its own sun cult, but certainly in the earliest stages, the earliest strata of Egyptian religion, there's essentially a star cult, right? And I know, yeah, smartass, like this, the sun is a star, haha, but like no, we're talking about something completely different, and these things are opposed to one another, right? In fact, you have a tension between the sort of periodic, cyclical, sort of sun and fertility, right? Like solar, and again, I'm not trying to get into like the three stages of like earth goddess, then solar sacrificial god, and then blah blah blah. I'm not even trying to go there, but you get this tension between the sort of like sun fertility kind of that shebang, in tension with this idea that certain individuals like will deify themselves and sort of either ascend to or return to their abode amongst the stars or beyond the stars, right? And so I think this is interesting, and definitely this tension reaches its high point in the reforms of Akhenaten, right? Who basically demolishes or tries to sort of like overthrow traditional like Horus cult worship with the worship of the sun disk, really explicitly. Anyway, and I know you have traces of the star cult in Chaldea, right, Babylon, etc. But maybe the most Jewish thing about me is I have some kind of bias against them, so I'm not going to give them credit for that. I'm going to say that probably came from Egypt. And its star cult. But anyway, like kind of running with this motif, I think there's something inherently like Promethean, right, or Luciferian, right, about uh, the star-oriented sort of process of deification for the elite. And that to me is a very, very American thing, right? Like I repeat a lot that I think America is a sort of Promethean or Luciferian place, right? Like at a foundational level, right? Like it was founded as such, right? I'm not even trying to make some like low IQ, like, oh, the Illuminati, Society of Cincinnatus, they like worship the devil. This has nothing to do with the devil, right? We're talking about the deification of the elite and the celebration of freedom, of total liberation from all contingent and conditioned phenomena, right? That to me is something that I'm beginning to associate with the Egyptian star cult motif. Although there are obviously echoes of that in the Hyperborean, like solar, sort of framework as well. Obviously, like Dharma comes out of the Eurasian solar like framework, so and they would say a lot of the same things. Last thing I want to say very quickly is simply that the other thing about Egypt is that who the hell is Egyptian, man? Like Egypt is so old. I mean, even the normie like historiography of Egypt is the civilization was so old that you have multiple people in multiple different periods of history pretending to be Egyptian or drawing direct inspiration from their understanding of the Egyptians, right? Like we laugh at the like we was pharaohs shit, but like Arabs do that today, like quote unquote Egyptian people who have absolutely nothing to do. They're just these like, these squatting like one-time conquerors, right? Squatting in the ruins of a great civilization, right? But even in like the Hellenic period, like Egypt was this old place that had been mixed up, and who really had access to the esoteric formulae and magical potentials of old Egypt. Like it was an issue of dispute and speculation 2,000 years ago, right? So the idea is that Egypt is sort of this place that everyone and no one can claim, right? It's the ferment of imagination, of slumbering gods, like of the potential to go beyond, right? It's inherently magical, and it's inherently sort of like unstable and unmoored from any like concrete embodiment in reality, if that makes sense. And to me, that's also like quintessentially American. So this kind of all comes together, I think, personally. At least this is sort of how I'm approaching this.
100%. I totally agree. I wish I had said that. Really great. Obviously, I was going to say before you said it's quintessentially American. Yes, I was going to ask you. I was like, well, could that not be America as well? Like everything that you said, every adjective that you used. Yes, that is quintessentially American, except that we are making the myth right now. We are choosing of what of history to believe in right now. So, and what system to use, and maybe that's what makes us even more interesting than Egypt. I'm sorry, Egypt lovers, but maybe it's somewhat thing more interesting about Hyperborea over Egypt. I'm not saying that it's necessarily I believe that. I'm just saying as an idea. What is more interesting is that we can make of it more because we're less moored, to borrow Solar's word, to those sort of like past conceptualizations, but we're also aware of that we're unmoored. So we know that we can build something sort of fresh. And maybe fresh doesn't mean brand new. Maybe fresh means like remix. There's nothing more remix or nothing more American than remix culture. And nothing maybe more quote unquote comedic American than remix culture. Yes, Matt, please go ahead.
Just to add to what Solar was talking about, this idea that you have like codes for the sun and codes for the stars. You can also say that you have codes for the moon. So it's the same idea, right? You can only see the stars so bright when it's dark. So it's kind of like a lunar kind of code. So then you have it, a type of initiation that requires you to see what's there to be seen, right? The sun, that which is revealed that everyone can see in theory. And you have the other parts of the initiations where you can only you have to be initiated in which what is occult, what is not revealed, right? And denied and so on. And then you had 14 parts of Osiris, which again, if you divide into pieces, so you have 7 revealed, 7 hidden. And then you get a lot of ideas from that, which actually as far as I remember, when I was talking to my Kabbalah mentor, he was talking about how the Persians would go and like separate basically the good forces in quotes and the bad forces again in quotes. So basically separating both the initiations, and then the lunar ones got lost for a long time because again it's quote unquote the bad ones, right? Is the kind of left path things. It's like, no, you shouldn't see this, it should be a code and so on and so on. So I find it funny that nowadays in like you see a lot of the, let's say, backstory of America, not backstory, but like a lot of the things that get talked about in America, it's all about this, like that America has like an occult kind of thing to it, like kind of like an occult government and occult, all these, like Solar was saying, there's this lunar thing to America as well, just like there's the solar one, right? America is the fucking ego. It has to be out there and it has to be doing things and talk loud about things and so on and so on. But I definitely see the mix of both. And then again, if we want to bring it down to more material understanding, it's electrical and magnetic. It's the analog and the digital. It's these divisions. So yeah, very interesting to see the correlations.
It's time of the Crystal Kingdom, Crystal Moon Matrix. Digital and analog. Matt said it. So yeah, and that's. I mean, it's weird. It's weird that we've gone through all of this since 2020, and we're like coming. Like for me, I feel like I'm coming to new realizations every single space. Like hearing you guys speak, hearing Solar speak, hearing Joshua speak, hearing Matt speak. I'm like, shit. I better get better than all these Nagas because they're quickly catching up to me or surpassing me. So, there you go. But yeah, I think quintessentially syncretic. But what does that mean? Again, low IQ syncretism or high IQ syncretism? What is syncretism really? Syncretism is really recognizing the inherent relationship or connections between the tree and like whatever sort of systems that you find. Like there's a parallel. There's a clear parallel between all the things. So find those connections, see the divergences, see what they mean, and like try and understand them at their deeper core layers. And I think that a lot of what I'm not like pro or anti like weird American star cults, and there are many, but I just think at least they've been trying, like like maybe imperfectly, and obviously there are multiple factions, right? I think that's a very interesting idea, and it's true. Like Solar brought up at the beginning, like there's like anti-cosmic factions, there's like like I don't forgot what they call themselves, like fourth columnists, fifth columnists, whatever, I don't remember, and like third positionists. There's like all these people with different world views, and they're trying to sell you their worldview, or at least a subsection of people. But that can also be a narrative container or klipa, right? So I think it's interesting to sort of play with it dharmically, like play with it in correct view, like non-dual view, bodhicitta, compassion, loving kindness, like that's your methodology. And so you apply that to whatever you're going to do or planning to do, and so, but I can still see it regardless. So I think, syncretic American, Kemetic American, that's America. Yeah, yes, of course I recognize the foundational stock of people that founded the things and all the ideas, but like you said, Solar, like Lon Milo Duquette, like he was talking about syncretism. In a way, I think often they were talking about syncretism. Like we know Benjamin Franklin was in a Hellfire Club. Hellfire Clubs were clearly inspired to some degree. I'm not saying 100%, but they were clearly inspired to some degree from Vajrayogini tantric either depictions or the tantras themselves. That's my personal opinion, but I do believe that that's true, and I think that it was like a sort of like we'll call it second like illuminant period. So, and we know that there were Vajrayogini texts written well into the 1700s. So I think that's really interesting as well. So yeah, that's what I'm going to think. I think that's kind of, we entered like this different kind of mother aeon, maybe the Kali Yuga, but like the tail end, the reddening, to bring it up, you know, we went from black into red. So it's interesting ideas that in America arose in that same time period, this very luciferic kind of aramonic also spirit, and I'm not saying negative or positive. It's plus ultra, but beyond plus ultra. So I don't know. Solar. I think Solar. I can't remember. I'm sorry, Joshua. Solar. Please go in the order that you raised your hands. I apologize. That was me.
I don't know. I don't actually see his hand up, so I think we might be starting to like bug pretty consistently. So maybe that's a signal from Alistair to wrap it up. Yeah, I just wanted to say about the. Okay, so it's funny that you brought up like third position Wignats et al. Right? Oh, now I see his hand. All right, cool. So there's this funny aspect, right? So I'm just using this as an example because, or two examples, right, of Wignats, or let's say like third positionists and set, right? So there's people who are Wignats because they genuinely believe in the project, right? They're sort of like positive ideas. They've entered into the framework of that worldview. I'm not endorsing it. I'm saying this neutrally, right? They've entered into the logic of that type of a system, and then they say, "Hey, I like these ideas. These solutions are good. Final solution, herder, whatever. I'm doing this for positive reasons, right?" Then there's people who are like, oh yeah, the media and everyone tells me that those are the bad guys. Those were just the worst pieces of shit imaginable. I want to be bad. Like I'm gonna be the sort of cartoon villain version of that thing, right? Those people are insane, right? But the broader takeaway, since presumably no one here is going to be, joining an Order of Nine Angles suicide cult, right, anytime soon, is that it's possible to get really, really deep in without actually to whether it's subculture, a system, or whatever, and realize that you're not actually tracking like with the framework. You haven't actually shed the previous assumptions that you brought into the thing, right? You're actually absorbing like the received ideas about that thing from the outside and then carrying through those ideas to inform what you think is going on as you continue in this. In the same way of like, I'm sort of obligatorily set in the role of a set truther, hashtag set did nothing wrong or whatever, I guess, right? But this would be the difference of saying like, oh, I'm a priest of Set who's carrying out these sort of rites and rituals, part of the star cult, deification, blah blah blah, versus oh yeah, Set was the guy who like killed God, and he's like evil and awesome, and I'm gonna be like a dark edgelord like that, right? Like that's obviously retarded, right? No one did that, right? And so I just like, it's just like not a word of caution, but just like we're engaged in constant like worldview warfare, right? That's what my bio is referencing, right? And just to like kind of be aware of that and how we are conceptualizing of these dualities, right? And to see like whose language, whose descriptors, right, we're actually like letting sort of hang on the wind and hang on our breath,
Yeah, totally agree. Obviously, I don't know, when I hear like the Set killing God, like to me that's like Havajra. That's just like it's more than a metaphor, but it's also a metaphor. So, or at least a mythic layer. So yeah, he did that, but what does that mean? What is the meaning of that? Like, what is it telling us about like the thurgic process? What is it telling us about being adamantine, about finding Rigpa? Like that's what the question I ask. So maybe that makes us like in a great position to be asking these questions, to come at like this end of like postmodernism and like the kind of like syncretic millennialism that we all were sort of raised in, and then obviously the Zoomers like sort of had to pick up the pieces after us and like take of like all this kind of like like all the it's kind of like crazy wisdom, but it's like it's pieces, little pieces all over. But that's kind of like, yeah, you can also return to traditionalism. You can return to the tree, and from the tree you can reach greater understanding, greater gnosis, greater heights of all the way up. So I like the story, but I think it's also like, what do you believe of it? I think that's how it is with everything. Is like your perception really matters. Do you believe it's evil? Do you believe he's actually killing God? Actually, or like I'm more anti-literalist. I'm the first to say so. I think I'm not saying that there's nothing literal in it. I'm just saying, what does it mean? I think I prefer a metaphor rather than, or like maybe that's a spiritual layer, maybe that's like a metaphysical layer, maybe that's a religious layer, maybe that's a tantric layer, maybe that's a kabbalistic layer. But I just think that it's deeper, and I think there's also an effect, right? Like there's a clear effect on the things we believe and like our reality, as Solar was even saying. Like, as Matt often says, I hear Matt talk about this all the time. Like, we are the magicians of our own lives. Take of it and make of it, and and that's what it is. So that's the same with ideas. It's like that's why we emphasize like discernment. That's why we emphasize like loving kindness, because like you can read ideas that you disagree with strongly, and you don't even have to like their conclusions. Like sometimes I read conclusions, especially from left-hand path texts. I'm like, they're fucking retarded. And I often think of that, and like people joke about like Llewellyn stuff. I'm telling you, sometimes those Llewellyn authors have better Kabbalistic knowledge. I'm not saying that I like their books. I'm just saying I've read a couple of Llewellyn books where I was like, oh, actually, they knew what the fuck they were talking about. And I've read some Left Hand Path books, and I'm like, they did know what the fuck they're talking about. So it depends, right? Doesn't mean that I exclude them all on the basis of like who got published in what publisher, what like mini, the latest anathema grimoire. But I can look at things for their own merit and like discern for myself what I think the proper conclusion is, or if I think these ideas are worthy, or as Solar said, like what we carry through with our words and our breath. Like there's lots of texts I've read that I don't even talk about because it's just, what's the point if I don't like them? It's not that I can't formulate criticisms. I can, but sometimes it's also not worth it. It's a better negation to just ignore. Okay. Yes, I'm sorry, Joshua. And yes, we will wrap it up soon, Solar, in the spirit of Crowley, I guess. Joshua, please go ahead.
Yeah, and since you just mentioned his name, I think his fascination with the this new eat, the stars, is maybe reflected in that whole thing he was talking about. So that helped me understand that. But to kind of circle back to the flag and how it's kind of analogous to the alchemical key, is that we have the the white stripes and the red stripes, but it got me thinking about how you have the milk of the gospel first, right? And then once you develop the teeth or the shin with the milk, you can then consume the Torah, which is, of course, bloodless if it's kosher, right? But that's like symbolic of the red or the meat. And so that's for the initiated, right? It's one shines light on the other in that way. And I kind of see that happening here. But there's actually stars on the flag as well, and they're set in a blue background. And so when we're talking about the moon in the sky with them, if the moon's not in the sky to compete with the stars, it's black sky with the stars pronounced in their full glory. But when the moon's in its full strength, it becomes the midnight sun, so to speak, under which that was the Passover moon as well, was under a full moon. And so there's this escape from captivity kind of element there with the lamb. And I keep forgetting to mention, I think, isn't Saturn in Aries now or something like that? So that to me has very strong Passover vibes, like the exception to the law, some type of atonement or camouflage from the angel of death, so to speak. So Anyway, I just wanted to kind of weave a little bit on the flag and how I think you're right. It's kind of like a star cult, because our royalty class is our celebrities. We call them stars, right? And so, yeah, they're all part of star cults. So I almost wonder if they get assigned a star in the sky, very Mufasa like from Lion King, right? But I kind of wonder maybe if they see themselves as being up there somewhere, kind of like you can buy a star on the internet and name it after somebody or whatever. But I think they're kind of doing that as like an extra theological process. Maybe they're using drugs or rituals or whatever, but some type of apotheosis type thing, maybe. And the one last thing I wanted to mention was the importance of maybe that you mentioned crossroads at the beginning of the space. And we had two eclipses which made a crossroads, and I almost kind of forgot about it until just now. And so I think that was very symbolic also of some type of whatever you want to call it, marker of time, so to speak. But
Yeah, no, that was great, Joshua. I actually did have a response for what you said a little earlier, but now it's totally gone blank. So we'll let Matt go and then ruminate on that. Okay, Matt, please go ahead.
Yeah, just very quickly, Joshua asked about if they want to see themselves like be put on the stars or something like that. If I'm not mistaken, on Greek mythology, that's exactly what Zeus does. He sees someone that's worthy, and then he goes and places them on the star, like be it a hero or an animal, whatever it is, right? Like he just goes and does it. So you become an example for others. It's like you get picked by Daddy Zeus.
Of course, it's like very Enochian, like Book of Enoch, right? Like that's what this is all about. Like they believe that as very literalist text. Like Mormons believe in that. Like one of those Book of Enochs, they believe in it very literally. And like they. So of course, this is like the foundational basis for all New American, both, and maybe say Old Babylonian, so New American and Old Babylonian star cults, using those as like more conceptual titles rather than maybe geographical specificity. But I think that they probably aren't as deep as that, Joshua, to be honest. There's clearly like an idea of going clear. And like obviously that relates perfectly to Kabbalah. I'm not saying perfectly, but there's an element that it does, and like even that using that word, there's obviously an element that relates to Dharma. There's obviously, yeah, I mean they're referring to a magical experience. They're just using sort of like the science fictive language of a certain magician who goes under the name or went under the name L. Ron Hubbard. So Elron, Elon, just think about it. So that they're just using the different language, but they're talking about the same thing. So I don't know if it's as deep. Maybe it's super deep. Maybe they have like all these amazing secrets of the universe, and like we should all go clear right now. I personally don't think that. I think that. But I do think they have some kind of metaphysical like resonance with what you're saying. I'm just not sure it's that codified or coherent. Star cults tend to be a little bit decoherent, simply because the stars appear at least further away. And so this is something that is discussed in Tantra quite a bit. And interestingly, a self-combusting star is also sort of another conceptualization of Diamond Thunder or Vajra, at least in the Buddhist conception. Because the star is for eternity, but then it's not. So something very Buddhist about that. Yes, Solar, please go ahead.
Yeah, just because it seems like we're sort of moving towards like housekeeping stuff. So I had two suggestions, maybe, or just like more like ideas for the group. Not suggestions is too strong. Just like I don't know, magical languages have come up, and I feel like I don't think we've done a space that's like specifically oriented towards that. Like it's come up almost so much that I would hesitate to propose it as like a main topic, sort of in its own right. But perhaps if we could sort of hitch that to something else, to kind of have that as like a strong undercurrent, or like a sort of like one of two interwoven themes for a space, that might be sort of interesting. Because I always have, again, maybe it's just because I'm a poet and have done some translating work, but yeah, I don't know. Every time magical languages come up, I have more questions, and we would love to talk about that. So just like something for us to talk about. And if people don't want that, cool. The second is just a question. I So we don't usually talk about like nuts and bolts of the magic that we are doing. For those of us who are actively engaged in that. And I was just, do the people not just in our group chat, but who actually come to these spaces regularly, like, is that something that would be of interest to discuss? Because we can keep that to the group chat as well. I'm just asking because, like, the other context that I would have to discuss that, I'm very much a junior person. So there's kind of like I have to expend more social capital and attach my real name to experiences that I'm relaying, questions that I might have. So I end up not asking a lot of questions, like I'm trying to impress people, right? And like, no offense to you guys, but like, you don't know who I am. I'm just some random dude. So like, I don't really care about like what you think of me. Which makes it much easier to actually ask kind of like technical questions, just like, or talk about sort of day in week in experiences that I'm having, just kind of talk shop in the magical arts. And I would love that if that were like just kind of informally a part of these spaces, but if that's not something that other people are engaged in, or are interested in kind of bringing to the space, it doesn't have to be here. But it's just something that, I don't know, is that something that people would want to spend a little bit of time on?
Okay, so first suggestion, excellent. In fact, I was laughing the whole time you were speaking because there is nothing like, okay, so if you're saying welcome to Hyperborea, it'll be obviously gospel and 7 arcs. We'll just do a clean 7 this time. I think that's a nice, Kabbalistic number. And well, one of the foundations is communication, is language. It's the way we describe the world. And because I was like perhaps somewhere where Creole, or a kind of Creole, is often spoken, it's actually has been something on my mind for probably my whole life, but particularly in the last few weeks. And I think it poses a really interesting question, like magical language. We've definitely discussed English, in my personal belief that English is a magical, or whatever, yeah, magical language, we'll call it, but it takes a bit of work in reconstruction. Or maybe not, reconstruction is perhaps the wrong word, but it takes some kind of rectification. I think I like that word better. So it takes a little work to crack the code, so to speak, of English, but it's all there. So definitely we're going to have a whole space solar, and I'll credit you, even though I was thinking of it. I was wondering, I was trying to think of what puns can I make from pigeon or Creole or something like that, but we'll credit solar, and we'll say, okay, brother solar suggests a linguistic space on Hyperborea, so that will definitely be something that will happen, probably the next space or the next one, so in the next 2 weeks for sure. So look forward to that. Second, practical magic. So I am a very pragmatic person, as I've said to you, Solar. So I do like talking practical, maybe not practices that I'm currently doing, but certainly practical magic, or conceptualizations through practical magic, of maybe higher order thinking. I'm definitely down to discuss. In terms of, to borrow a phrase from you, I hate this phrase, but I'll use it anyway. I don't hate it that you said it. I just try not to use that kind of language. But nuts and bolts, we will say that, or I'll call it my Mala and yeah, Mala and Dorji. So we'll say it like that. I'm practical and pragmatic, but I'm also a big fan of mantra japa. I think that's incredibly powerful. I've had my best experiences have all come from that, have come from sadhanas, have come from just sitting there doing it, and reciting the text, doing the visualizations, thinking of the prayers. So I don't know how much necessarily help I would be for you, but I definitely am interested in discussing that and like what I think are the better practices more broadly. So certainly, I I'm down for it if people want that. That's something we can definitely do under our Friday night Gnostic Mass. We'll definitely do a whole. Maybe we'll do a mini series on practical magic, and I think that would be really interesting. So. Okay. So, okay, thumbs up. Good job, Jin. Okay, gold star for me. Okay, so we will close up now. I hope everyone had fun. I had a lot of fun. I laughed all really hard. I actually was good. I'm learning to be a better podcaster because I actually mute myself now. So anyway, so I laughed quite heartily during this episode, this arc of our Gnostic Gospel, Kemetic American, Arc 3. Um, I think that we didn't necessarily talk about the things that I was thinking of. Well, Matt and I did a little, and then Joshua and Solar brought it somewhere else. But I think that's actually interesting. That's a good polarity, you could say. And like Joshua, he likes a little more of that fixed positionality, and Solar brings like a certain gravitas. So I think that Matt and I maybe are a good sort of counterbalance, like a good. We're more comfortable maybe with that. I don't know, hermetic energy, so we kind of bring it there. So I think it's great. I love that it happens like that. I mean, it happens in this synthesis, right? Like our interesting ideas, but whoever they come from, and I do try and credit, and I do believe in that ugly feminist thing called standpoint epistemology. I actually think it's actually important. I think it's important to credit where you get your ideas from. I'm not saying you can do it perfectly every single time, but I think that if you can remember in crucial moments, and I'm not the best at remembering at crucial moments, but I will really try, or I do really try. And I think because then you can examine where the ideas that you have come from. So I take it more as a hermeneutic rather than like, oh, I'm going to be a feminist and ascribe everything. I'm going to be decolonial and describe and ascribe every thought that I have to someone else. No, it's not about that. It's about really understanding why you are thinking the things that you are thinking, and if they came from a source other than you, and what does that mean, and where did it come from. So that's sort of how I think of it. But I also think it's important to credit people who generate ideas, even if they're syncretic for you. So I try and do that. Imperfect, but I do try. And obviously, so in saying that, yes, it happens in synthesis. So thank you to our co-hosts, who I will all let close us out. But Matt Murrah, of course, Kabbalah, and Astro, and everything, tarot, everything. He knows about everything. Matt has the understanding. Um, Joshua also has the understanding. He is our, I tease Joshua for being a little fixated on Gevra, but it's okay. Fire's a good element. I'm cool with that. So there you go. So Joshua, the branch, awesome dude. Check out him and Chris from the King of Cups KOK, channel KOK on YouTube. Also, Joshua is returning guest to my show, as is Chris. And so as soon as my little hiatus, my little break is over, we will which is in 3 or 4 days on Monday, so we will that will happen again, and Solar as well. So there you go. And obviously, Solar, thank you for bringing the big boy questions, really appreciate it. And yes, you are some dude on the internet that we don't know, but actually I've come to care, and I care about what you think, in the sense that, like, do you think it's even interesting? Do you think it's worthwhile? Do you think I'm on like a good path? Like, I actually care. So I'll say that. So there you go. And I also care about what you have to say. I care about what all of you actually have to say. I know it sometimes seems like the Jin show, but I promise I really do take into account everything that is told to me. If you like something, if you dislike something, I do try and amend it. Maybe that's a little, yasodic of me, but I'm an imperfect person, but I try and create a vessel that we can, at least for these spaces, we can sort of share in and partake in, and something that is worthwhile. So if we go for 3 hours, it's worthwhile for you. So I hope that it is that for everyone. It's that for me. And so thank you. And thank you, Solar, for reminding us of that. John Space answered, for all your Astro needs, please ask John and pay him well. Bullbrave Free, Lodge member since OG. Really appreciate you coming to all these spaces. Wow. Fuck yeah. Sir Tim of the Tunnels, thank you so much, Sir Tim, for coming. Appreciate it so much. You can be a part of our experimental, speculative, Gnostic American series, which I think is actually really cool. We are getting the reviews are in. It is really fucking cool. Everyone I know has been blown away. Guests from Rejects have asked me about it privately, like not privately, but like before and after we have done recording. They're like, what are you doing? And they want to hear all about it, or at least I am so eager to tell them. And so amazing. It is pretty fucking cool. I mean, this is our third series. That's pretty, or second series. In fact, we've already planned our third series. That's how crazy these are. In a way, obviously they're not crazy. They're quite tame, to be honest. But I think it's cool that we are generating enough plus ultra, you could say, enough like electromagnetic charge that I felt the need that we could do a series that inspired by our brother Rom. So obviously it's by demand from the people, from the lodges. I have to figure out a way to synthesize it. So hopefully we can make that happen. So thank you all for being a part of this amazing, cool project on syncretic Hyperborea, which is also America. Space, which is also your consciousness. Space answered. Oh, okay, yes, already did you, John. Sorry, thank you. Bulberry Free, thank you. Sir Tim, thank you. Shakti, Japanese Zucchini Queen, thank you so much for your presence, for your input, for your participation in the group chat. You've been a lodge member as well since the beginning. I used to remember doing Aeon of the Daughter and seeing you pop in was like, this Japanese person thinks I'm absolutely insane. But I've actually come to realize that there are many Japanese people who may or may not be also insane enough to understand what I'm saying. So that's interesting. And who have read and sort of interpreted the material in many of the same ways. That's also kind of reaffirming and interesting. And so, and that being said, I think Joseph Reed, I think he's a great person to thank for coming, for being a lodge member, and because obviously that's also what he does is like, yeah, there's a Kabbalistic sort of framework you can draw from Marshall McLuhan. So, it's just different degrees of the same language. Just like, how do we understand what they're really saying? And that's a big part of language and communication. It's very Hodemaxing, right? Andre, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it. Don't know you, but welcome. And I want to thank everybody for coming. Obviously, this was after our last week, which it definitely was about technological issues. But I have to say, I was quite burnt out. I was like really exhausted. So I would have gone through, I would have pushed, as always. I've done many burnt out spaces. I apologize. Grey Lodge spaces. But I felt a lot more refreshed. I felt like I come at it fresh faced. I think that will be interesting. And hopefully we can keep generating interesting arcs and topics and keep the Hyperborean project alive. We won't just make Joe Nally do it all. I'll pick up some slack. So that being said, if any of the co-hosts want to plug, they can plug, and then we will close out.
I can quickly go. So first of all, thanks a lot, Jin, obviously, for hosting. Thanks for the other co-hosts as well, Josh and Solar. Always a pleasure talking to you guys. And thanks for everyone that was listening. So I'm Matt Mora, like Jin already said. Kabbalah and a little bit of everything. Most specifically, something I want to say, which is very nice. I'm working on an open source library for a lot of esoteric stuff like Kabbalah, Tarot, whatever. So I hope that because it's open source, people actually use it and build many thousands of apps. I already see there's a lot of astrology apps nowadays. It's kind of a way for people to earn money. To be honest, they're not so much into the actual for real astrology, but it's whatever. It's better than nothing. But yeah, thanks a lot for listening.
Well, I don't have
The
anything.
branch.
Oh,
Oh, sorry, Solar.
yeah, no, sorry, it was volunteer basis here. Sorry, I don't have anything to plug. So instead, I said some cornball stuff about bodhicitta a few weeks ago, and I wanted to circle back to that because there was a really beautiful thing that a mutual friend of ours, the Lodge, but he wouldn't want me crediting him, said to me in a DM that I thought was really cool, and I'd like to close out with that. He said, and for me to return to your original question, bodhicitta is the desire to light that whole landscape on fire, my whole mind, the whole world, and to release the power at its core. So anyway, thanks for coming tonight, guys. Love these.
Fuck yeah. Awesome. That was a great way to end it. Okay, Joshua, see if you can beat Solar.
Well, you gave me a pretty good outro earlier, so I was going to close with a joke. So, although we live in the Milky Way, expect a lot of bullshit, but just remember the bullshit makes flowers grow. Look on the bright side of life.
Fuck yeah. That's true, right? So you have to, like, what is the carnal ground and what is the garden? It's a place for the flowers to grow. It's a place for the flowers to bloom. The bijas, the primordial seeds, you have to make those fucking work. You got to put those in the ground. You have to treat them with loving kindness. You have to treat them with care. They don't work otherwise. We know because we've tried it many times. I'm not saying we can do it this aeon, but if you watch Battlestar Galactica, all the things that have happened now have happened before, right? It's the Mormon parable. So basically, but it's also because Ron Moore brought in a lot of Vedic stuff. He brought in Buddhist stuff. He brought in Tantric stuff. He brought in mystery cults. It's all there, let's just say. So that's a very Happaborian series, and I think a good way to close out, just simply because that is the story. It's like we are trying to escape what some have called the prison or the black cube matrix, but really, that's not a prison. That's a tool, and figure out how the fuck to use it. That's what I say, anyway. And use bodhicitta and also use discernment. I think both of those will guide you, at least to a degree, to the right place. So thank you so much. Appreciate it. I'm sorry, Andre. Next time, if you come to the next Friday space, we host these every Friday, the Grey Lodge. You'll be welcome to come up. We're going to close out tonight, but thank you guys so much. And obviously, I'm Jin the fucking Ninja. I host a show called Threshold Saints. I also am erstwhile crazy wisdom guide for the Grey Lodge, sometimes at least when you allow me. But also, a kind of speculative guide of these series. And so this is our second one. First one was Aeon of the Daughter, which, looking back, is kind of crazy that I did live action in a way. Speculative Gnostic Gospel of Love, I say. And it'll be 13 arcs. I'm working on it actually right now. Not right now, but, I've been... Anyways, I've been working on it. So 2 more arcs just for my show. For podcast austerity. The archive. And what else? Okay, so everybody's episode will air this month. I promise. On Bodhicitta, on the higher order. And thank you guys so much. And obviously, yeah, I'm interviewing Don fucking Webb, not just me. Obviously, there's a couple other people that will be there, but it feels kind of like me because obviously, I mean, Uncle Sekhmet, legit, I used to carry that shit around high school. because it would freak people out, and I thought it was fucking hilarious. And it's really not as it's not. He's the one thing you have to appreciate about John Webb. He almost has a non-dual quality in his writing. Before I think he even understood maybe what that was. Maybe he did. Maybe it was intentional, but um, his stuff's not that crazy, to be honest. It's not really crazy. It's quite tame from like Left Hand Path standards, and it's but maybe that's the beauty of it, and maybe that inspires me to a great deal. Now looking back, like just looking at my whole whatever quote unquote occult career, you know, maybe that's the right text for like our Aeon or our Yuga is like something that is edgy, but it's really not crazy. And maybe that's a good place to be. And also probably a good place to end it. So we are the Grey Lodge. We are a group of meta magicians, we'll say. And, we're here. We're doing very interesting speculative Gnostic work. And we don't really have an agenda. And we don't really have anything to plug except that our spaces are interesting. I think they're very avant-garde. I think they're kind of cutting edge. I don't necessarily think I'm any of those things, and I don't think I'm any of those things, but I think it's something different, it's something interesting, and it's not paywalled. And I actually like that we do kind of a crazy stream of consciousness because that's what people like. I mean, people watch streamers that have nothing to say. I'm not saying people should watch me. I'm not saying I deserve it. I think all the co-hosts deserve it, but I'm not saying I deserve it in particular, but I just think you actually might learn something, or at least think of something interesting, or pick out a seed, or there's something maybe with more depth here. So I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of all of us, and think it's really fucking cool. I think if I look back on any year and whether we are still doing them or not, I think it'll be like a really cool, interesting, notable, perhaps, project that we all participated in, and I thank you very much. So, with that being said, I Gnostically love you all because love is the cause of knowledge, of course. And thank you so much, and thank you to Matt, Dr. Birkin, Joshua the Branch, and Solar Exile. And of course, the Grey Lodge, without whom none of these spaces would be made possible. And of course, Plus Ultra, meaning that magicians rule the world. The Sage King is real, but it's really a cabal. And so remember Plus Ultra. What goes up must come down, but you can also rectify it and bring it into synthesis. Then you can make upward rising lightning, Joshua. That's a thing. Upward rising lightning. Very interesting, Joshua. Okay, good night, guys. Thank you so much.